This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
You know, this is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/future.
A warmer, friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends as we're going to be chatting it up with Ben Wilson, who does great work over here at VSiN. We're going to be talking with him about what we've all seen thus far in the Big Ten. We did this ahead of the Nebraska versus Michigan game, which I have to recap that was a very, very fun game to say the least, but we're going to be taking a look at just some of the dynamics of some of these teams that have been surprises towards the beginning part of the season that aren't quite fading away. Additionally, we're going to be chatting with him about what he's all seen with regards to West Coast landscape, with the WAC teams, the WCC teams, the perhaps upside that we have with Santa Clara, and so much more. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some big shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_81. Keep in mind, letters Z on the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. We had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Michigan does hand Nebraska their first loss, but a Nebraska team that had Rink Mass warming up, but they were without him. Their sixth man in Brandon Frager, they do a great job of hanging in there. 75-72 the final. And if you, like me, had the over in this game, 98 points in the first half, 49 in the second. You don't typically see half the points in the second half scored that you got in the first, but for Nebraska, they dared Michigan to shoot threes, and Michigan only went 6 of 26 from 3. Now, the way that Michigan won this battle was that without Rink Mass, Nebraska was a little bit outgunned on the glass. They lost that rebound battle 35-23, but for Michigan, it was all about Morris Johnson being able to bail them out. 17 points, 12 rebounds. For Michigan, they do lose the turnover battle 19-11, and 20 points apiece for Nebraska from Price Sanford out of DeMarcus Lawrence. So nice quality cover there. Not a win, but you know what? That was a good showing out there. And for St. Louis, no cover against George Washington. George Washington had a 10-point lead at the half, but St. Louis finds a way to eke this one out 79-76 the final. As for St. Louis, they do go in this game 12 of 31 from 3-point range, and If I'm not mistaken, it was Trey Green who hit a three with about 3 seconds remaining that ultimately ended the game. As for St. Louis, they do go just 11 of 22 at the free throw line, played even up 42-42 in the rebound battle, 14-14 in the turnover front, and Robbie Avila, 22 big points in this one. But George Washington, they do remain lively with a quartet of guys, Rafael Castro, Christian Jones, Trey Autry, and Tyrone Marshall. I'll give between 12 and 15 points. So George Washington, they did a nice job on that front. And Notre Dame, they take Virginia to double overtime, 100-97. Virginia is able to pull it out after they were trailing for pretty much the entirety of this game. Notre Dame goes 11-27 from three-point. Cole Kurta, he did his best for the team, 34 points, but in a double overtime game, Notre Dame got 3 points off the bench, and for Virginia, they win the rebound battle 40-35. They do lose the turnover battle 11-10, but for Virginia, Theodorus DeRitter, 14 of 15 at the free throw line, 32 points, 8 rebounds. That gets them the win, and UConn, who's been a pretty rock-solid team this season, they do not get the cover against Providence. They do get the outright win, 87-81, but Providence played them tough in this game, as Providence only 5 of 14 from three-point range, but did a solid job down low. They only lose a rebound battle 37-35, and for Providence, they found a way to get to the free throw line, 24 of 31 at the charity stripe, and for UConn, 5 different guys were able to give you at least 12 points per contest, with Terrace Reed being the main headline scorer with 19 points, but UConn just 18 of 28 at the free throw line, so a little bit of an issue there. Looked like Michigan State was going to go down to Rutgers, as Rutgers had a 37-28 lead at the half, and they were in full control of this game. They were up 6 points with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. As a matter of fact, they were up 12 points with about 10 or so minutes remaining, but Michigan State, they force overtime, and for Rutgers, fortunately, they were catching like 14.5 points, so they get the cover, but they lose 88-79 the final, and for Michigan State, the man that bailed them out, Jeremy Fears. No fears here. 9 assists, 29 points, and then how about Carson Cooper? 12 points, 14 rebounds out of him. Michigan State absolutely dominates the rebound battle, 45-22, but for Michigan State, they also lost the turnover battle 15-5, as you did have for Rutgers. Tariq Francis off the bench, give the team 23 points, so we did see a lot of underdogs be able to come through. One of those underdogs was not Oklahoma, 83-79. Arkansas on the road, despite going 2 of 17 from three-point range, they find a way to persevere. Oklahoma 10 of 27 from three-point range, and you did have 22 points out of Nigel Pack, but Darius Acuff continues to be rock solid with 21 points. For Arkansas, they win the turnover battle 12-6. They do lose a rebound battle 34-31, but even with that cold three-point shooting on the inside, they go 33 out of, hopefully my math serves me correctly, 56 on their two-point shots, so they were able to win from within. Charles Bediako gets his first win since returning to Alabama, 90-64 the final, as Bediako in 18 minutes he had 14 points, 6 rebounds. Nice effort, as Missouri just 4 of 21 from 3, in Alabama cooked a Missouri team has not guarded the 3 all season long. For Alabama, 15 out of 39 from three-point range. Latrell Wrightsell did a nice job supplying 21 points, so Alabama, nice clean win and cover out of them. And then in terms of the other ranked teams, Miami of Ohio, no cover here against UMass, and Miami of Ohio has been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball, 86-84 the final. UMass did a really good job of pushing them, and for UMass, this was just a night where they were not really missing a whole heck of a lot of shots whatsoever. For UMass, they came out 5 of 5 on their first 5 threes. They finished 9 of 21 overall from distance, and for UMass, they win the rebound battle 34-32. Now, the way that Miami of Ohio finds a way to get it done is Ian Elmore was able to go into takeover mode, 30 points, 7 rebounds. He goes 6 of 11 from three-point range. Miami of Ohio does win the turnover battle 10-9, and for UMass, the team has been rough at the free throw line, 13 out of 17 at the charity stripe. And then another ranked team that was not so great, Kentucky, 80-55. Kentucky falls to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was looking a little bit shaky with that 3-game losing streak. They're back on track as Kentucky 6 of 24 from three-point range. Ortega Oweh provided the team 20 points. Denzel Aberdeen 15 points, and the rest of the team just did not show up. Nobody else had more than 5 points in this game. Vanderbilt wins the rebound battle 43-37. They win the turnover battle 15-9, and you had 19 points apiece out of Tyler Nickel along Tyler Tanner. So Tyler squared was able to get the job done for them. If you're looking at the best against the spread teams in the game that were in action on Tuesday, Miami of Ohio was at 13-5 against the spread. They fell, but now your best against the spread team that was in action on Tuesday because they supplanted them, that'd be Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. Now, Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, they do not get a cover themselves, so now they're down to about 15-4 against the spread as Northwestern State was able to hold in there against them. This by kind of 69-67 as Stephen F. Austin actually got up 18-3, and that was a line of about 14, but Keon Thompson, 27.6 rebounds, so Stephen F. Austin now 11-1 out there in the Southland, so they're going to be an interesting watch moving forward. Eastern Michigan has went 14-6 against the spread. They've been able to cover a lot of numbers for you, and against Central Michigan, they got absolutely lambasted, 100-65. Keep in mind, Carlos Hart was one of those guys implicated in that gambling sting, and they're without him moving forward. And for Central Michigan, 9 of 19 from three-point. It's been a less than tremendous season for them, but every one of their starters at least 12 points in this game. For Eastern Michigan, they lose the turnover battle 19-9, so that was not the effort that they were looking for, to say the least. Arkansas, I mentioned before, they're now 14-7 against the spread, and some of the lesser teams in all of college basketball against the spread. Marquette actually entered into the night dead last in terms of covering spreads at 4-16-1, but they were able to get one through against a Creighton team that has been up, down, all around. For Creighton, they lose this game 86-62, so Marquette finally able to get online there. Marquette 8-21 from three-point range. They shoot 58% from the floor. Creighton 7 of 34 from three-point range, and Creighton loses the turnover battle 14-6 as Nigel James, he's starting to really take over for Marquette. 21 big points in this one. Chase Ross was able to throw in there 6 boards, so yay verily to the worst cover team really in all of college basketball being able to get one through. And Texas Southern, they're now 4-13 against the spread. They entered in the day a bottom 5 team against the spread. They were able to get it done in convincing fashion against Alabama State, 96-64 the final for Texas Southern. It's been an adventure taking care of the ball. They did a much better job in this game. Just 11 turnovers, 12 of 29 from three-point range for them, as you had 6 different guys be able to score in double figures, and Alabama State a nice hearty 5 of 30 from three-point range. So that's good to be able to get it done for you. A team that is also just simply not getting the job done right now. It has been a rough one for UConn, who I just mentioned them, 7-14 against the spread this season. Oklahoma, they were a non-cover team on Tuesday as well, 7-13-1 against the spread. And Wake Forest is also now 7-13-1 against the spread. They pretty much lost their game twice against Pittsburgh, as Pittsburgh, they find a way to persevere in overtime, this by a count of 80-76, as Wake Forest was pretty much leading throughout the game, but they are unable to close this one. As for Wake Forest, they do hit their free throws, 15-19 at the free throw line, while Pittsburgh was 17 out of 25 at the charity stripe. But for Wake Forest, the turnovers were costly. They lose the turnover battle 13-8. They lose the rebound battle as well, 42-37, even though they had Miles Colvin go off for 18 points on the side for Pittsburgh. Was Barry Dunning being able to get her Dunning, 15 points, 9 rebounds. And how about Roman Sapula? He was able to give the team 15 points, 15 rebounds. So that is another non-cover out there for Wake Forest. If you're looking at your top over and under teams in all of college basketball, Denver still by far the top over team in all of college basketball. All but one of their games have gone over, and with what we saw on Tuesday, Miami of Ohio now 14 overs, 4 unders. They are now your second best cover team in all of college basketball. We have been seeing a lot of overs out of Providence. They were able to net another one against UConn, so they're up to 15 overs to 66 unders thus far this season. And it's also been a nice year to the over for New Orleans, as they're up to 14 overs to 7 unders, and they were an underdog against Nichols on Tuesday. And in a day game, they had to make this one up from a game that was postponed last week. They got it done by a count of 80-62. This was an under for New Orleans, as they were able to tighten up a little bit on defense. Nichols just 10-33 from three-point range, and New Orleans dominated the rebound battle 48-28. So yay verily there. So a top over team, they were able to finally net you another under. And then if you're looking at your top under teams in all of college basketball, most of them were not in action on Tuesday. Really, that top under team was Michigan State, 6 overs to 15 unders. That game went to overtime, so that went overwhelming. And with that underwhelming second half for Nebraska, they're now up to 6 overs to 15 unders. Eastern Michigan, they played an over. They have been one of your top under teams, 6 overs to 14 unders out of them thus far this season as well. And then you've seen a lot of unders with regards to quite a few of these MAC teams, as Northern Illinois, 6 overs to 12 unders, but they did play a little bit of an overwhelming game, as they were able to take it to Western Michigan by a count of 85-65. And then another team out there in the MAC that is 6 overs to 12 unders thus far this season. And if I'm not mistaken, that they were not in action, that would be Ball State. So Ball State has been another one of those teams, as you've had a few teams out there in the MAC that have just really been underwhelming for you thus far this season as well. And did have to do this for posting it up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. So as of right now, we have yet to see if New Mexico actually did take down UNLV, but they were up 41-22 at the half. Been a rough year for UNLV if you've been betting on them against the spread thus far this season. Then we did see a little bit of a shocker with Rhode Island going on the road, taking down Dayton Dayton 81-76 the final. As for Rhode Island, been a little bit of a topsy-turvy year for them, but 7-16 from 3, 28 of 36 at the free throw line, 24 big points out of Jamari Tripp. And Dayton, who had started off the year, I believe, 5-0 in A10 play, I think that they now have 3 straight losses, so things are very much on the fritz for them. Central Florida's been a pretty solid team. No cover, though, for them against Arizona State, 79-76 the final. And NC State, they were able to clobber Syracuse, 88-68 the final. Syracuse has started out the year as one of the better under teams in all of college basketball. That was a little bit of an overwhelming result. And for Central Florida, by the way, even though they've been a prolific offense, 7 overs to just 13 unders for them thus far this season. Michigan has also been 7 overs to 13 unders, so some very fascinating teams have been able to net you some good unders thus far this season. Dayton, who I just mentioned before, they're up to now 8 overs to 13 unders themselves. And Bowling Green, 7 overs to 11 unders. Bowling Green has been one of your more underrated MAC teams as well. For Bowling Green, they do take it on the chin, though, against Buffalo, a Buffalo team that have been coming off of a few rough losses, 89-78 the final. So this was overwhelming for Bowling Green as they allowed Buffalo to go 14 of 26 from three-point range. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in this great sport of college basketball, it has been all about the underdogs here recently, as the underdogs have been hitting at a clip of darn near 57% over the last 7 days. Now, if you take a look at the season to date, this is with the West Coast games still pending. The underdog hit rate is about 51.3%, 1,787 and 1,699 against the spread, and the under rate is about 50.6%, 1,763 unders to 1,724 overs. But if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, we are starting to see a just big giant trend to the unders, 175 unders to 131 overs, and the underdogs, they're hitting at about 51.3%, 157 and 149. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our Ben Wilson, talk a little Big Ten, talk a little West Coast, and so much more right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at CBBAnalytics.com. That is CBBAnalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ben Wilson aboard. He does such excellent work here at VSiN, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he's hard at work, taking a look at a little bit of everything. He's getting set for the Super Bowl. He's doing some work for us on the Australian Open as well, does a lot of our live betting shows, does a great job with indoor football, you name it, he does it. One of the best play-by-play voices that you're going to find, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first name Ben, and underscore his last name Wilson, and underscore after that, and then the number one. And Ben, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, likewise, Greg. We are, you look up and all of a sudden, we're basically into February. It's like 6 weeks till Selection Sunday, give or take. So, yeah, great time of the college hoop season.
Absolutely. And Ben, it has been a wild college basketball season thus far. And just what have been some of your takeaways here from conference play? Because it feels like a lot of the teams that were surprises that we thought were going to be tumbling back down. Now, we are doing this out of the Nebraska versus Michigan game, but a lot of these teams have yet to fade into the abyss like a lot of people thought.
No, and it's interesting. I think part of it, a lot of these conferences, and you've seen it. Nebraska is a great example, even in a league like the Big Ten that's super deep, or even teams like Santa Clara, St. Mary's, and Gonzaga, teams in the West Coast Conference that I cover. That's been a way deeper league this year. You're talking 7 teams in the top 120 of the overall net ratings, and yet there just hasn't been a fall off. I don't know that I can really pinpoint it on one thing, but I think what is clear to me is a lot of these teams, even if there is some negative regression that you just kind of assume, those teams are by and large legit. And it's not just feasting on weak non-con schedules. It's not just on an easy conference. And even in the cases like of a St. Louis and a Miami of Ohio, who aren't in leagues that you kind of, you'll lump in as being super deep, super elite style leagues, I think there's clearly staying power there in each of those individual cases that make me believe there is clearly something legit about it. It's a situation where I'm not just going to be blindly fading those teams as we get deeper into the conference season. There's clearly something that's working, right? Those programs all have good coaching, a smart acquisition of guys either through the portal, NIL, whatever. And it's come together really well. And it kind of seems like in the era we're in, Greg, you either get that cohesion and fluidity and it just kind of meshes, or it doesn't. And I think you're seeing a lot of teams, you have teams on one end of the spectrum that it's clicked for perfectly. And then you have teams like Maryland on the other end of the spectrum where it's just everything that can go wrong has. And that's a program that should not be as bad as it is. But you look up and they just have not had it click. And, they're destined for probably like a, 10, 12 win season.
Yes, absolutely. And it has been a lot of fun to see what we've gotten in the Big Ten because obviously Michigan and Nebraska, top 2 teams entering into the day on Tuesday. But just up and down the boulevard, it does feel like we're getting really good production out of these other Big Ten teams as well. Michigan State, they entered into the day 8-1 in Big Ten play. And actually, they're losing at the half right now to Rutgers. So we'll see what happens on that front. That could be a nice little plot twist. But Illinois is able to rise up. I know that Purdue loses that game to Illinois, but they've been a rock solid team. USC, they're dealing with injuries, but they've still been able to overcome a lot of them. And it just feels like we've got a nice middle right now in the Big Ten as well.
No, we do. You mentioned Illinois. They've been a team that I have just historically looked to bet on in the regular season and then fade come tournament time just because of their statistical profile. They always shoot a ton of threes. I'm not a fan of teams that generally, take a high rate of threes who aren't a very good 3-point shooting team, but at a certain point, you got to tip your hat and look at the sort of makeup of their squad this year. And the 3-point shooting, it's not like it's amazing. Look, last year, they were one of the 50, 60 worst 3-point shooting teams in the country. It reminds me of like when the Chiefs were coming up with Mahomes and you just wondered, okay, if the defense could just be like average, they'll be able to win a Super Bowl. That's kind of what this Illinois 3-point shooting feels like. It's like if they're just okay, they're as good as anybody in the country. And you sit there now, they're 68th here in 3-point efficiency, number 1 Ken Pom offense in the country, still shooting a ton of threes. But on the defensive side, they've cleaned up a lot. They really don't foul at all. They're a really kind of a tall, physical team that to me is built for success. So I wonder, is this the year amidst everybody talking about Nebraska and Michigan and the really sexy teams? Is Illinois that one team that because of all the shortcomings in March with Brad Underwood, we've just kind of written off that may just be that sleeping giant in the league this year?
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see how they are going to be faring moving forward, if anyone else is going to be able to rise up, as well as it has been a lot of fun out there in the Big Ten, as Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSiN, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Ben, I know that your main forte and one of your main beats right now is with regards to those West Coast conferences, the WAC, the WCC. You've got a nice package of games that you're calling every weekend out here out west. And how do you take a look at some of those mid-majors out west? We're going to be seeing a lot of them in action, especially on Thursday. I believe we've got a few stray games on Wednesday, but it does feel like the Mountain West has been quite a bit down this year. You had the chance to call a few teams like Grand Canyon over the last few years, but additionally, on top of that, it feels like in the WCC for Gonzaga, they're showing some vulnerability. Meanwhile, a team like a Santa Clara is one that I think a lot of people are sort of losing sight of because they're not staying up late for their games, but I feel like they've been one of the more under the radar surprises in all of college basketball this year.
No, they have been. It's funny you bring that up because I was on VSiN earlier today, and then I was asked, of all the teams you see, the conferences you cover, what's like the biggest sleeper for you? And I mean, I feel like Santa Clara, that's the first team that came to my mind. And we're getting to the point here where, I mean, I know it would feel weird to see us get 3 WCC teams in the big dance, Greg, but
we've seen it before.
I mean, you're right. It has happened. You think about
just a few years ago with San Francisco.
Yep. I was going to say, when you had the San Francisco teams and you think about, the depth of the quality of the league and everything, I mean, it's one of those things where, and we're talking here the day before the Broncos host San Francisco. Dons have fallen off a little bit here recently, but a lot of what Herb Sendek's team is doing to me is completely sustainable. Like, they crash the glass really well. And it's the rare case of a team that shoots a lot of threes, isn't a great 3-point shooter, that I actually don't mind their strategy, because they're so good on the glass that, I mean, they get so many second chance points, and they've got big dudes. I mean, Elijah Mahi's been fun to watch. Like, Bucky Aboye is just this guy. They just throw him in there. He's 7'1", and he just seems to snatch up every rebound that comes near him, especially a great option on the offensive end. And he's shooting, I think he's like over 70% on twos this year. I mean, it's just, if he gets the ball near the paint, he's scoring. And then defensively, they turn you over a lot. It's a really high-pressure system. They've got a good deep bench that they use. And to me, it's the classic example of what I was talking about at the top of, this might not be the most experienced team in the world. It's not a team that had played, guys hadn't played together, not a ton of continuity, but clearly the people they've brought in have meshed together extremely well. They've got a good veteran head coach, and it's not like they're 8-1 in conference play, 17-5, and the home game against St. Mary's a couple weekends ago, they really controlled pace and tempo in that game. I mean, they hung with Gonzaga, for a while on the road. That there was no shame in losing that game. They covered, no shame in losing the way that they did up in Spokane. So there's a lot of staying power to me, and they'll get Gonzaga at home. They'll still have another game against St. Mary's. Like, there's a real path for this team that if they go the rest of this slate and maybe only have one more loss, you will be looking at a top 40 KenPom team. And I think a team that'll be really hard to keep out of the big dance, assuming they at least get to the WCC semis and avoid any bad losses from this point on.
Yep, they'll get actually Gonzaga on Valentine's Day of all days on that Saturday. So there could be some love in the air for Santa Clara. Hopefully we get that. That would be a lot of fun, as Ben Wilson, who does such great work over here at VSiN, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly those are going to be some fun games that we're going to be seeing on Wednesday. We've got a lot of WCC action. We've got a lot of Mountain West action, and just for a few teams in general that you do have your eye on, whether they be playing on Wednesday, on Thursday, or a little bit further during the weekend, because we are going to be having ourselves a little bit of Big Ten play with USC versus Iowa. I'm very fascinated to see what happens in that game, but I feel like up and down the board on Wednesday, we've got some really good games and some very critical games with a very, very wide bubble that needs to be shrunk a little bit.
Yeah, we do. And I'll mention the WAC, which I'll be doing their conference tournament games here. It's going to be sort of bittersweet because it's the last year of the WAC, and it's really a forgotten about league. I feel like on the national stage, there's only 7 teams left, and which is a shame because it is one of the more fun leagues as far as just complete diversity of style. You've got, let me just read you, Greg, the tempos here of the WAC teams. You've got 30, 47, 58 in Tarleton, Southern Utah, and Utah Valley. And then you go 231 Utah Tech, 281 Abilene Christian, 292 UT Arlington, and 303 Cal Baptist. It is like you either got these just absolute grinded out football and the basketball hardwood wars, or you've got super high tempo, lots of high volume shooting, and it's made for some really fascinating matchups. And I can't wait to see Utah Valley plays Tarleton State. That's Thursday here, so I know that's not for the Wednesday card, but that's a game where like Tarleton has been, and at least by net rating, I mean, they should be way better metrically than being sitting there basically at the bottom of the standings. I think they are dead last right now at 2-5. But Billy Gillespie has had a lot of health issues over the last couple of years. He has not been with the team I've seen for a couple games in the stretch. But this team, it's fascinating. They've lost 4 straight. Yet you tend to see them play really good ball at home, and they're about to come home against the Utah Valley team that I can't figure out. To me, they should be the best team in this league, but the experience that Todd Phillips brought back, it really hasn't translated necessarily. And Jackson Holcomb's a really good mid-major player. He's that classic, guy to show out and get an opportunity at a Power 4 program that probably gets poached. As frustrating as that is for the programs like Utah Valley, but it's a team that if you're Utah Valley, you turn it over almost more than anybody in the country here. They don't shoot threes particularly well. And now you're taking on a Tarleton team who is the second best defense in the country in steal percentage and turnover percentage. It makes your eyes bleed when you watch them on offense. And I say that endearingly because I love covering Coach Gillespie in Tarleton State. And they don't mind it being that way. But that is a home dog to look out for on Thursday, where I'm guessing that line's going to be anywhere in the 2.5 to 3.5 range. But I kind of like Tarleton here in a league that is very diverse in styles, that is very hard to really find a lot of difference between, to be a good buy low spot there to snap their losing streak. And I can't wait to get to that tournament here and see how the bracket shakes out. But that would at least be a game. Kind of to say it's under the radar, Greg, is a vast understatement. But Tarleton at home as a dog against Utah Valley, I do like that spot. And we have seen more of the Utah West Coast schools really struggle when they've made these Texas road trips throughout WAC play since that new scheduling came about a couple years ago. So look for the Tarleton Texans there, Greg, down in Stephenville on Thursday.
Oh, I absolutely love me some Tarleton State, number 2 in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And I have no idea what the record is for most points per game off the bench, but Dior Johnson has to be in line for it. He has been absolutely incredible. So that's been a lot of fun. And, well, we are both men from the state of Wisconsin, Ben, so I do have to mention it. Right now, Wisconsin about an 8.5 point favorite against Minnesota, coming off of a not so great loss against USC over the weekend, one of the very few games that we saw on Sunday. So we got to see that in prime time along with some great football. And what do we make out of Wisconsin in this spot? Because I actually think that this is about as good of a bounce back spot as you can get in the Big Ten against a Minnesota team that we know how tough they are at home, but they have some of the most demonstrative home and road splits in all of college basketball. And this Minnesota team just is not the same away from the barn.
No, they are not. One, it's funny. I don't know if this was the last time I was on with you, but one of the last times I was on, we had the first Wisconsin-Minnesota game, and I talked about how I thought it was a great spot to go with Minnesota. And I think they were, I want to say they were, you would remember better than me, I think they were 2.5 or 3 point home dogs, and that ended up being Wisconsin hit depending on what numbers you had, that could have been a push or a tough loss, but Wisconsin hit the game-winning three, and it's funny, like that was a 3 point game. And yet Wisconsin was like 14 to 33 on threes. Braden Carrington was amazing off the bench, and Minnesota couldn't hit a three-pointer to save their lives, and yet they needed a Wisconsin three basically at the buzzer to win that game at the barn. So it certainly should have played out more in Minnesota's favor, yet you turn it around, and I kind of agree with you where those same principles align here. And Minnesota defensively, they have really struggled defending the three. I thought, big part of this 5-game losing skid, and I realized 2 of those losses have been in overtime, but part of it has been against, all top 50 competition. They've just struggled when they need stops to really close out on 3-point shooters, and they give up a lot of 3-point looks. They give up a lot of good 3-point looks, and Wisconsin is a team that shoots a ton of threes, and they generally take high quality shots. Even if they don't necessarily go in, they're a bit maddening of a team in that regard because we've seen the Badgers be pretty streaky from beyond the arc. But at this point in the year, we're getting into end of January, early February. Badgers know what their identity is. It's not really going to change. I would think this is a game where, at Minnesota, if you're going, 14 of 32 or whatever from 3-point range in what was a bad spot, now you're coming home in a good bounce back spot. I would assume more of the same here and looking at maybe some team total angles for Wisconsin. This is a game where I could see the Badgers push 80 pretty easily when you think about the way the Gophers have been giving up points, especially away from home.
Absolutely, and it is going to be a lot of fun to see what we get on Wednesday in college basketball with the Badgers and so much more. And Ben, you're doing a great job covering it all here at VSiN, whether that be on the tennis front, the football front, the basketball front. You're a jack of all trades, my friend. Let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Hey, appreciate it as always, my friend. Ben_Wilson_1. We have NLL lacrosse right now, MLS preseason, college baseball in a few weeks, and then kind of interspersed a lot of my college hoops and NBA G League. It's all kind of throughout the week. So I try to post what all stuff I'm doing, but a lot of WCC in the regular season and then WAC tournament once we get to the postseason. So it's a very fun, very busy time of year. Always great to chat about it with you, my man.
Absolutely. Every single time Ben joins me, he lends such great insights. He did so once again today. So a big thanks to Ben for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we some bank shots.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by our good friend Ben Wilson, who does such great work here at VSiN, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know he's been doing some tennis work, he's been doing a little bit of everything, football, you name it, he does it every single time he joins me, learns such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ben for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games in the bigger conferences first, and then at the bottom you're going to have the games from the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Atlantic Sun. If there were to be a straight Southland game or two, as some of those have been moved, those will be at the bottom as well. So how about if we get things started? 665, 666, it's Baylor. They're going to be on the road against Cincinnati. And yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is on to being a mid-sized favorite here, 4.5 points. 147.5 to 148.5 is a total. Set a total of 145.5. I do like the under. You've got a Baylor team that's actually really been slowing down here in conference play. In non-conference play, this was a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, really gunning it. They're still 99th overall, but in conference play, they've been playing at a clip of about 3.5 to 4 possessions per game slower. Cincinnati's really slowed themselves down. They are down outside the top 115 in terms of total possessions per game, and I would set Baylor as a 1.5 point underdog, and I've been dogging Baylor a lot. I've been fading them because the James Nanji situation has not been great, but this is a Baylor team that, away from home, they're shooting 37.3% from three-point range. That is a top 45 mark in all of college basketball, and they do a really nice job, give themselves second and third chances in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound in games played away from home. They are 4th in the country, and Cincinnati is just simply not executing on offense. They turned the ball over well over 12 times per contest. As Kurt Kriisa really can't be trusted there. Jizzle James has been able to give you about 10 points per contest, throws in there a few assists, so he's been a little bit of a help to them, but still, this is a Cincinnati team that is currently 266th in terms of points per possession on offense. Baylor's 41st now. Cincinnati still actually a really good defense for Cincinnati, top 20 team in terms of rebound percentage. Cincinnati is also 13th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Baylor is 223rd, but let's say you get into a late game fouling situation. Cincinnati shoots, and I'm not even kidding here, 65.7% at the free throw line. That is 350th in all of college basketball. You've had Day Thomas do a nice job being able to give the team scoring 11.5 points. He shoots 41% from three, and they're a good rebounding team with South team, 11 points, 6 boards, block and half per contest. Baba Miller, 14 points, 7 boards, block and half per contest as well, but guys like Jalen Celestine and company aren't necessarily giving you a ton. And for Baylor, it is a team with a thin rotation, and James Nanji has not even scored a point in, I believe, the last 3 games, but Isaac Williams off the bench is giving you 10.5 points, shooting, and I'm not even kidding here, 55% from 3. We'll see that go downward, but Cameron Carr, 20 points, 5.5 boards, he shoots 40% from 3 to drive the offense. Obi Ejim has stepped up in a big way with about 10.5 points. Tonde Yusufu, a little bit of everything, 17.5 points, 6 boards. It's a Cincinnati team that doesn't take care of the ball, and Baylor's not going to put you under duress, but they've been above country average average in terms of taking care of the ball, so I do think that there's going to be some sloppiness, and Baylor has been outside the top 200 with regards to defensive rebound percentage as well, but a top 100 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, which that becomes important because Cincinnati from 3-point range right now, they are shooting 30%. That's a bottom 35 mark in all of college basketball. So since Cincinnati is just 1.5 point favorite, I'm taking the points with Baylor, and I like the under, so my total 145.5, 667, 668. California is on the road against Florida State, and the Seminoles are a 2.5 to a 3.5 point favorite. 154.5 is the total. I like the over. I did set my total at a 157.5. You've got a Florida State team that they are very much looking to run it and gun it in terms of total possessions per game. They check in number 18 in all of college basketball. And Cal, mid-tempo team. They're 172nd in the country, but this is a Cal group that has shot it really well from 3-point range, going against a Florida State team that has been country average, 173rd in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but Cal 16th in 3-point shooting percentage away from them at 39.5%, and they guard the three relatively well as well. You've got a Florida State team that they're looking to bomb it from three. They're taking 52.4% of their shots from 3-point range in their home games. That's the top 10 mark in all of college basketball. Cal, 17th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage defense away from home. Away from home, they allow teams to only shoot about 25.5% from the outside, and you've got a guy in Data Ames who's able to give you 17 points, shoots over 42.5% from three. Now, Cal's not going to grab for themselves any sort of second and third chances. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their overall rebound percentage, but you get them in a tight spot, and Cal, they are shooting 79% of the free throw line. That's a top 10 mark in the country. As a matter of fact, each of your top 4 scorers all shoot at least 82.4% at the free throw line. John Camden, Justin Pippen combined for 28.8 points per contest between the two of them, shooting over 38.5% from three. Chris Bell gives you 13 points. Lee Dort, lone guy on the roster that really gives you over 5 rebounds per game with about 7.5 boards per contest, but that's a little bit less of a factor here against a Florida State team that they themselves are not doing a great job on the glass. They'll give themselves second and third chances. They are a top 100 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but in terms of overall rebound percentage, they are outside the top 200 with this regard, as you've only got two guys that give you a really over 4.5 rebounds per game. Lajay Jones, 11 points, 5.5 boards, and then Alex Steen, 7.6 rebounds. And for a team that takes a lot of threes, they don't hit too many of them. They shoot 31.6% from the outside. That is outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. They themselves are getting just blasted down low. They're outside the top 270 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So I think that you get an up and down game. And one thing Florida State has done a great job of is generating turnovers. Top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Cal, 39th in fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. So set Cal is a 3.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line and like the over. So they total 157.5, 669, 670. Iowa's going to be playing us to USC. USC is an underdog here of 9.5 to 10.5 points. 140.5 to 141.5 is the total, and made a total of 142.5. I'm going to be in on the over. You've got a USC team that's looking to bump up their tempo. 33rd in terms of total possessions per game, though I will say last 3 games they have been playing at a clip of about 7 possessions per game slower. I think that's a little bit of byproduct of the teams that they played, and Iowa 361st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They're playing super duper slow, but it is a USC team that finds themselves well outside the top 75 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got an Iowa team that, even though they don't have a lot of possessions, boy oh boy do they know how to use them. This Iowa team, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 18th in all of college basketball, and they're just so much more effective when they're at home rather than away from home. In their home games, they rise up to 8th in the country in terms of points per possession. They do a good job in terms of not turning the ball over, while they themselves are a top 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Iowa at home, they shoot 38.4% from 3-point range, and you've got a USC team that has been a little bit up and down with that 3-point shooting. They actually shoot about 34.8% from 3 away from home. That's a top 85 mark in all of college basketball. That falls to 29.5% at home, but it's all about Chad Baker-Mazar right now for USC. He's had to become the do-it-all guy with the Rodney Rice injury, and I mean, he's done a good job of it. He's right now supplying the team with 19 plus points per contest, throws in there 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists. He shoots 38.5% from 3-point range, and then you've been able to get some good production out of Ezra Usar with about 16 points, 6 boards, Jacob Kofi, about 7.5 rebounds per game, and what I think is going to keep USC lively in this game is their shot blocking. They're a top 15 team in terms of block shot percentage, as Mazzara, along Kofi, combined for 3 blocks per contest. Gabe Dines is a 7'3" big man that gives you a block per contest. Jerry Easter is starting to give you a little bit more, and Elijah Arenas should be able to give a little bit of pop in the backcourt as well. Just got back out there. He's put in there 15 points in his first 2 games. Very highly touted freshman and the son of Gilbert Arenas. And then for Iowa, Bennett Sturts is the head of the snake. 18 points, 5 assists. He shoots 37% from 3. Tavion Banks is able to throw in their 10.5 points per contest. You don't have a single guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game for this Iowa team, but they still do a nice job on the glass because they just don't allow second and third chances. Now, they themselves are well outside the top 200 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, but they just hit their first shots, top 35 mark in terms of 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that Iowa at home is going to be able to get it done. They've been a top 15 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, but I do think that USC cranks up the tempo a little bit more, and they're able to remain lively, especially with Arenas out in the fold. So I set my line at an 8.5. I'm willing to take 9+ here with USC, and I'm going to be in on the over. I'm willing to take a 142 or less to the over. 671, 672. It is Butler. They are going to be on the road against St. John's. St. John's is a 11.5 to a 12.5 point favorite. 161.5 to 162.5 is the total line. I'm going to be in on the under. I set my total at a 157.5. Fully recognize that you've got two very up-tempo teams. St. John's hovering in that neighborhood about 28th or so in the country in terms of total possessions. Butler more around about 39th, but it is a St. John's team that at home they are 12th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and additionally they've been able to do a really good job generating turnovers, as this is a top 45 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It is a group that from a season ago they are much improved with their 3-point shooting percentage, as Osiah Sellers has been able to shoot darn near 40% from 3-point range, and it is a Butler team that has been a little bit hot and cold with their defense. Overall, they're clocking in right around about 100th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Main strength has been grabbing second and third chances. They're a top 35 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, with Michael Ajayi give you 16.5 points, 11.5 boards, steal per contest. He's been rock solid, and now he's back up to shooting above 30% from 3 after a rough start to the season. Finley Bizjack, he's bizjacking teams, giving it 17.5 points, shoots 36% from 3. The injury to Jalen Jackson certainly hurt this team, but I do think that Butler is going to be able to put some points up on the board, but I do think that they're going to be limited by a St. John's team that they've got the best low post presence in this game. That'd be Zuby Ejiofor, who's been able to supply you with a pair of blocks, 7.5 boards, 3 assists, 15.5 points per game, and when you've got Sellers giving you 11 points and 3 boards per contest, that helps a big time. Dylan Mitchell, 9.5 points, 2.5 assists. Great versatility there. St. John's has yet to really figure out that point guard spot, and that's why they have been a little bit, shall we say, on goal with regards to their own offense, as they're about 153rd in the country with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Now, what really benefits them is the fact that they've been able to do a nice job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances as well. In terms of percentage of their missed shots, they result in an offensive rebound. St. John's is 24th in all of college basketball at home. They grab 37.7% of their misses as an offensive rebound, but that said, I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game with the way that St. John's is able to control possessions, and I do think that St. John's should be able to get the job done here, but I do think that once you hit a 12, it goes a little bit too far. I set my line at 11.5, so at 12 plus, I do think that Butler has enough to be able to hold in there, especially with Butler being a team that has been in the top 175 in terms of ball security, so I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm willing to take the points with Butler at a 12 plus. 673, 674 on the card. Mississippi State, they're on the road against LSU, and LSU is a 7.5 to an 8.5 point favorite. Totals between 150.5 and 151.5, and Deon Thomas being back for LSU is very big, but I still only set them as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, for this LSU team, they're not even a great 3-point shooting team with all of their offensive production. For LSU, they're about 200th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. I will say, big home and road split. They shoot 37.2% from 3-point range at home, 27.7% in a road/neutral venue. As this team overall is in the top 40 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis at a sense of the top 20. One there at home, Deon Thomas, so 6.5 assists, only about 1.7 turnovers per game. That's big because this is an LSU team that is a top 125 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, top 25 team with regards to free throw shooting percentage. So they make up for the lack of 3-point shooting in just so many different ways. But this is an LSU team that, while they do such a great job in terms of being able to knock things down on the inside, they're pretty much the same way defensively, in which they are going to give up some open looks from 3-point range. This LSU 3-point shooting defense has been less than amazing at 223rd in the country. Teams shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range in their home games. That is outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. And one thing Mississippi State has done a solid job of is being able to lock it down from 3, 42nd in the country with this regard. Now, Mississippi State is not going to put you under any duress whatsoever. They are outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And for Mississippi State, lackadaisical in terms of grabbing second and third chances. They're hovering right around about 155th in the country in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. So on the flip side, with LSU having quite a few guys who are able to haul in there some boards, you get about 8.5 rebounds, 13.5 points per game out of Markel Sun. That's going to be big. Michael DeWolko, 14 points, 6 rebounds. Like Paulo Tamba has been able to give you 7.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. That's going to be large, but I do think that Mississippi State holds in there. I know that they're on a 5-game losing streak, and it's been less than savory, but you would still have the best scorer out there in Josh Hubbard, who's been able to give you 21 points per contest. Chris Jans, by the way, has never had a team at Mississippi State that has been inside the top 270 with regards to 3-point shooting percentage. Right now, they're at about like 345th if you include D1 and non-D1 games at 29.8%, so it's been less than tremendous there, but this is a team that has been able to give themselves a few looks down low. They've been a top 175 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. You've got Jaden Epps, who's able to give you 15 points per contest. It is still a little bit of a banged up LSU team, and with this team's ability to be able to take away really that perimeter offense, I do think the Mississippi State, in a game where we're going to see quite a bit of offensive production, in my opinion, is able to do just enough to hold in there, and Quincy Ballard giving you a block and half per contest, I think is going to be big in this spot as well. So I did set a total here of a 155.5. I'm going to be in on the over end. Set Mississippi State as a 5.5 point dog, so here at 6+, I'm going to be willing to take those points. 675, 676 is Northern Iowa. They're going to be on the road against Southern Illinois, and Southern Illinois just find themselves as a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 130.5, and I said Northern Iowa is 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. It's a Northern Iowa team that is looking to play very slow and controlled. Right now, a nice hearty 357th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Illinois is looking to push pace. Southern Illinois 51st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Southern Illinois top 20 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line. They are 129th with that regard, and that does take away one of the strengths of this Northern Iowa team. Northern Iowa away from home is a top 5 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Teams shoot less than 27.5% from 3 against them. Now, Northern Iowa actually shoots a little bit better from 3 away from home rather than at home. 33.6% away from home, 31.3% when they are at home. And this is a Northern Iowa team that they're not doing the world's greatest job on the glass. They're outside the top 320 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They are not going to give themselves any sort of second and third chances. And for Northern Iowa, they've been surprisingly really stout down low with regards to their opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. You look at them in a road/shoot score venue. Teams shoot 45.1% against them. That is number 6 in all of college basketball, and that's a big reason why I was willing to take them in this spot, especially with Southern Illinois not really having that go-to scorer. They've only got one guy on the roster that's able to give you double figures. That would be Kelron House, and he's been able to do a nice job throwing in there about 13.5 points, 3 assists per contest. But Damian Mayo is right now the only player on the roster that shoots above 32% from 3-point. He shot about 38% from the outside, and it is a Southern Illinois team that, to their credit, top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But same with Northern Iowa, and Southern Illinois has had their issues taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 235 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Northern Iowa does a better job in taking care of the ball, and additionally with Southern Illinois, they don't shoot well at the free throw line whatsoever. So if you do find yourself in a nip and tuck spot, and Northern Iowa is not a team that's going to be fouling a ton, so you're probably not going to be finding a whole heck of a lot of free throws for them, so that actually helps out the Southern Illinois team a little bit. But I mean, in a pressure spot, Southern Illinois at home, they shoot 64% of the free throw line. That is a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. Overall, they do shoot 67% at the free throw line. That is 337th. Northern Iowa, 336th. They shoot 67% at the free throw line, both at home and away from home. So both of these teams are awful at the free throw line. So that helps you out even further to the under. And then for Northern Iowa, the big reason why I do take them here on the money line is that I do think that their backcourt play is just a little bit better. Trey Campbell, he shoots 33% for 3, 14 points, 3.5 assists per contest. Leon Bond, 11.5 points, 5.5 boards. He's shooting 39% for 3. Even though this Northern Iowa team, they're not going to grab for themselves second and third chances. They actually don't do the world's worst job in terms of preventing second and third chances as well. You take a look at opponents' defensive rebound percentage, and this is a Northern Iowa team that right now is checking in 44th in the country. Away from home, teams only grab about 23.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. You've got Ben Schwieger, who's been able to step up in a big way, giving this team about 10 points per contest. They've needed him, especially with Tristan Smith being in and out of the lineup. Probably going to be out of the fold once again in this game, as he was a guy that was giving you about 10 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. But Max Weisbrod, who came up from the D2 ranks, he's been able to give you some nice ancillary production as well. I know that he dealt with injury towards the beginning part of the season, but he's come back. He's been able to give you some rebounding, and I do think that this is going to be a grind and a slog of a game that Northern Iowa finds a way to pull out. Said Northern Iowa is a 1.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line, and I'm going to be in on this under, so I total 129.5, 677, 678. It is St. Bonaventure. They are going to be on the road against Duquesne, and Duquesne is a 3.5 point favorite. 155.5 is the total. Made a total of a 154.5. I do like the under. You've got a Duquesne squad that has really pushed tempo this year, 29th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. St. Bonaventure is 240th, which for them is pushing tempo. They're typically not a fast team, and for St. Bonaventure, I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there. I set my line at 4.5. This was an opener actually of 5.5. So if we can get between a 4.5 and a 5.5, I would rather take 5+ with St. Bonaventure rather than lay it with Duquesne, mainly because this is a Duquesne team that I really don't trust at the free throw line. You can trust the Bonnies with St. Bonaventure, 76.5% the free throw line, top 50 mark in all of college basketball. basketball. Duquesne, 228th. They shoot 70% at the free throw line at home, and this is a Duquesne team that I wish I could put it any other way, but they're just incredibly sloppy with the ball right now. Right now, they are 284th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, outside the top 10 in their home game. St. Bonaventure, they themselves are about 140th, but St. Bonaventure is the team that does a much better job in terms of generating those turnovers as well. For Bonaventure, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, they are in the top 75 away from home, and strangely, St. Bonaventure allows fewer points per possession away from home rather than at home. They're supposed to have this great home court advantage and everything like that. Overall, they're about 238th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but that ascends back into the top 75 when they're away from home. So that's been very strange to say the least. Meanwhile, it's a Duquesne team that now they are getting back one of their main guys in John Hughley, who he's been able to give you 14 plus points, 5 boards, is able to pop it from 3, began his career over at Pittsburgh, and Duquesne, they themselves have only been about 150th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Duquesne, you've been able to get quite a bit of production out of the backcourt. Terrence Goonyard, he comes over from UT Martin. He's been supplying 16.5 points, 5.5 assists, shoots 40% for 3. Jimmy Williams has been able to shoot 38% for the outside. He gives you 16 points per game. Of your top 4 scorers, all but one of them do give you at least 4.8 rebounds per game. But for the Bonnies, I do think that they're going to have the best low post presence in this game, and Frank Mitchell with his double-double, 16 points, 10.3 rebounds, steal and a half per contest. And then additionally, you've got Daryl Simmons, who's been able to give you 15.5 points, shoots 41% from 3-point range. It's a Bonaventure team that has been a top 100 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and for that matter, just a top 100 team in terms of overall rebound percentage, not allowing a lot of second and third chances. I think that prevention of second and third chances is going to be able to help them out here. Now, Bonaventure outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but did semi-total 154.5 with thinking that you're going to get a lot of turnovers in this game. I'm in on the under. I did set my line at 4.5, but again, if we can have an option between 5+ and 3.5, I would rather take the 5 with St. Bonaventure rather than lay it with Duquesne. 679, 680 on the card. Western Kentucky is going to be on the road facing off against Kennesaw State. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls as Kennesaw State 3.5 to 4.5 point favorites. 162.5 is the total. I did set my line here at 1.5. I'm going to be won't take the points with Western Kentucky. Both of these teams are dealing with massive losses. For Western Kentucky, they've been dealing with injuries to a lot of their top guys. You've been having out of the fold a guy that I really like in terms of his overall rebounding, and Brian Selbungwe, and that has really slowed this team down. Tegan Moore has been missing with an injury as well. He's their top scorer, and Kennesaw State, they are 7th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but their point guard Simeon Cottle, he was caught up in the FBI gambling probe a few weeks ago, and he's currently not with the team, so that's not great to say the least. He was averaging over 20 points per contest, so now it becomes a whole greater than sum of its parts approach for Kennesaw State. Now, among your remaining top 5 scorers, all but one of them do give you at least 5 rebounds per game, with Frank Von Sherman, 9 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and that is where this team is going to need to win this game. For Kennesaw State, they have been a team that's been very good on the glass. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they are 52nd in all of college basketball. They are a team that's very, shall we say, lacking with their 3-point shooting outside the top 225 with that regard, but they will give themselves second and third chances, 25th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. And Western Kentucky, they're okay in terms of generating second and third chances as well, 112th in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You take a look at them away from home, that does ascend to the top 85, so you've got a little bit of help there. And then additionally for this Kennesaw State team, the guy that's going to be running the point for them most likely is going to be Archie Johnson moving forward, 12 points, 3 assists per contest. He gets a little bit of help from Caden Reichert, who's able to give you about 6.5 points, 3 assists. Neither of these guys are necessarily prolific scorers, but Johnson, when he needs to pop it from 3, he does, shooting 46% from 3-point range. And for Western Kentucky, especially with Tegan Moore now missing a little bit of time, it's going to be very much mix and match for them, as Moore was giving you 17 points, 6 boards, shot in the mid-30s from 3 for a team that only shoots about 33.6% from the outside, but you still have your sharpshooter Ryan Myers, who comes over from Western Illinois, give you 10 points on 40% 3-point shooting. Cameron Huffner, he began his career over in Eastern Illinois along with Evansville. He's come in, he's only giving you 5 points per contest, but has given the team a lift, shooting 35% from 3-point range, has been rather limited in the last few games, so they're going to need to get him going. But you do have Armello Boone and Grant Newell in the interim, giving you about 23 points, 11 rebounds per game, and it is a Western Kentucky team that they do a nice job taking care of the ball. They've been a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. For Western Kentucky, they do give it up from the outside. That's their main kryptonite. They're outside the top 245 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but this is a Kennesaw State team that they're looking to pile drive the ball down low a little bit more, especially with not having great 3-point shooting. And where Western Kentucky can hold up is with regards to their interior defense, ranking 78th in the country in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. You take a look in a road/neutral court venue, that does ascend into the top 35, and I do do think that that's what's going to keep Western Kentucky in this game. And additionally, for Kennesaw State, if they do find themselves in a little bit of a pressure spot, this is a team that at the free throw line has been very suspect at 69.7% outside the top 250 in all college basketball. So set a line of 1.5. I'm will take the points with Western Kentucky. They could get very much an up and down game. So by total at a 165.5. So I like the over. 681, 682. Oakland is on the road against Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne home underdogs of 1 to 1.5 points. 164.5 is the total. And I made Oakland a 1.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay 1 and not a half a point more with Oakland, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is a Oakland bunch and certainly is getting laying based down low. They are 350th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but this is a Fort Wayne team that they're based around the perimeter. This is a team that does a really good job in terms of taking care of the ball, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They are 29th in all of college basketball. They've been a top 55 team in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis on defense, but this has been an Oakland team headlined by Brody Robinson that has done a great job in terms of maximizing possessions themselves. They are now 23rd in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Robinson has been the main head of the snake in the backcourt, 6.5 assists, 16.5 points per contest, shoots 36.5% from three-point range. And for this Oakland team, as they are a pretty solid three-point shooting team at 34.7%, that's a top 150 mark in all of college basketball. They actually very much look to pile drive the ball down low, top 75 team with regards to percentage of their shots that come from two-point range, with Bori Navarula along with Isaac Garrett, who've been able to combine for about 20.5 points per contest. Both are relatively solid big men. Michael Hoagie gives you 13 points, 5 boards per contest. So this is a team that by committee has been able to do a solid job there. They will give up second and third chances. They're outside the top 235 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but now they go up against the Fort Wayne team that's just getting absolutely blown away on the glass. They're outside the top 355 with regards to their overall rebound percentage, so that is going to be very much playing to their favor, and this is a Purdue Fort Wayne team that very much can be had down low. If you take a look at them in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentages, this is a team that is going to be selling out to be able to generate turnovers. They find themselves currently about 257th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. And this is an Oakland team that has been a little bit better regarding the perimeter. They have been a top 200 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Purdue Fort Wayne, you're really built around a big three in the backcourt. Cordy Hadnot has been the top scorer with 20 points, shoots 35% from three, and then Mikhail Stevenson and DeAndre 3000 Craig combine for about 30.5 points per contest. Between the two of them, they shoot 37.5% for three, both shoot over 80% at the free throw line, and I do think that Fort Wayne going to do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball, win that turnover battle, but that's with their weakness inside. Although I will say Fort Wayne, they are a top 75 team themselves in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, so they do a nice job executing there. I think it leads to a nice high-scoring expose, but in the end, I do think that Oakland finds a way to get the job done in a pressure spot. Purdue Fort Wayne 71.9% at the free throw line, Oakland 74.9% at the free throw line, so made Oakland the 1.5 by favor, 1 to lay up to 1 with them, and like the over, semi-total 167.5, 683, 684. Davidson is on the road against George Mason. George Mason is a 7.5 to an 8.5 point favorite, and your total on this game 135.5. And I did set a total here of a 133. I do like the under. It is a pair of teams that are not going to be looking to push tempo whatsoever. 339th in the country in terms of total possessions per game for Davidson and George Mason. They are clocking in 331st. But what I find to be interesting is that George Mason still a solid defense, but they seem to have taken a half a step back here. They're about 91st in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Not doing a bad job on the defensive glass, but not necessarily an amazing job overall. About 73rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Davidson, when they've hit the road, they haven't been the world's worst defense. They do find themselves in the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this is a Davidson squad that may very much live and die by the three with regards to their offense. And on defense, they allow teams to only shoot about 30.1% from 3-point away from them. That's somewhat random considering they allow teams to shoot 34.5% from 3-point range in their home games. And for Davidson, they're a team that shoots 38.4% from 3-point range in a road/huge score venue. That is a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. And George Mason has been absolutely lighting it up from 3-point range when they've been away from him at 37.2%, but that does go down to 32.7% at home. But the way that George Mason makes up for it and stays efficient on offense, they don't turn the ball over. This George Mason team, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, they are currently a top 50 team with this regard. As a matter of fact, 33rd in the country, although they do turn the ball over a little bit more when they're at home rather than away from home. But overall, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, George Mason 52nd. Again, scoring fewer points per possession at home rather than away from home, but I do think that they're going to be able to do a pretty solid job winning the rebound battle against a Davidson team that just flat out, they don't give themselves any sort of second and third chances. And for Davidson, it's a whole is greater than some of its parts approach. You've only got two guys that give you double figure. Robert Blums, who gives you 11 points per contest, shoots 40% for three. Josh Govins, 10 points, 4 boards, and he shoots less than 30% from three. And then you essentially have 6 other guys that are contributing for this team. As a matter of fact, 5 other guys that give between 6.3 and 9.7 points per contest. Hunter Adam does shoot about 45.5% from 3. Parker Fredrickson, he's been able to shoot about 40% from the outside, but I do think that in this case, George Mason is going to be able to win out with that just overall rebounding prowess, especially with what you've been able to get out of the backcourt out of Corey Mincy, who's come over from Presbyterian, 16.5 points, 4 boards, shoots 42.5% from 3. Jari Long, who comes over from Maryland, 11.5 points, he shoots 39% from 3-point range. And Masai Troman, who's been a little bit in and out of the lineup, he's now been able to give the team 10 points per contest in a pressure spot. George Mason, they shoot about 74% the free throw line, and George Mason's not going to give themselves a lot of second and third chances. They're outside the top 200 in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well, but I do think that with the way that George Mason is a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this being a rather slow and control game, that George Mason finds a way to get it done. I'm going to be one to lay the number, made George Mason the 7-point favorite, and I'm also in on this total under. I did set my total at a 133, 685, 686 in Charlotte. They are on the road against Temple. We give our own to Lane Kiffin go Owls as the Temple Owls are a 4.5 to a 3.5 point favorite. So on this game, 140.5 to a 141.5. Did set a total year of a 142.5. I'm going to be in on the over. I know that both of these teams are playing at a very slow and controlled rate. Charlotte is 334th in the country in terms of total possessions. You got a Temple bunch as 302nd, but you should be able to get clean possessions on both sides. And it's a Temple team that's been able to do a solid job on offense. They're 130th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Charlotte has been even better. Charlotte is currently 114th in the country in terms of points per possession, and I always said Charlotte as a 2.5 point underdog. I'm going to be one to take the points, mainly because I think that Charlotte is going to be able to find more second and third chances to execute. They're 66th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Temple is 270th, and to the credit of Temple, even though they don't really give themselves a lot of second and third chances, they don't really let you get a lot of second and third chances either. They're a top 90 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, but neither of these teams are necessarily going to be putting you under too much stress with regards to generating turnovers, and Temple has been a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're also 278th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. This Charlotte team is 305th, but it is a Charlotte bunch that is going to have the best low post presence in this game, and Anton Boynke, who comes over from Providence, he stands right around about 7'2". He's been able to supply the team with 10.5 points, 8 boards, and he actually shoots 35% from 3-point range to go along with the block and half per contest. Dizay Mingo has been able to keep the offense more efficient this year. Comes over from Marshall, 11 points, 4 assists, shoots 37% for 3, and then Ben Bradford throws in their 14 points per contest as well. It is a Charlotte team that in a pressure spot, they shoot about 71.5% the free throw line, just a hair below country average. This has been a Temple team that has been able to do a nice job knocking down their shots as they do shoot overall from 3-point range about 35.5%. That's a top 110 mark in the country. Aiden Tobias and Darion Bill Ford Tough, they combine for about 32 points per game. Between the two of them, shoot 35% from 3. Gavin Griffiths shoots 36% from 3. Just a lot of balance with this team, especially with A.J. Smith out of the fold. They have needed it, but they've been able to get a little bit more out of Messiah Gilliard, who comes over from Manhattan. He's been able to give you about 4 boards per contest to be able to help out a little bit more down low. It is a Temple team that has been able to do a pretty solid job with their perimeter defense. They're a top 125 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they're outside the top 230 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 150 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And this has been a Charlotte team that has been able to do a relatively solid job down low. They're a top 155 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that keeps them very lively in this game, despite the fact that Temple in a pressure spot, they are a little bit of a better free throw shooting team. So my line at 2.5, we'll take 3+ here with Charlotte. Made my total a 142.5, so I also like the over. 687, 688 Rice. We give our to Lane Kiffin go Owls. They are going to be on the road against East Carolina. East Carolina is a 1.5 point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 141.5 to a 142, and made East Carolina a 1 point favorite. I was pretty much willing to take whoever the underdog was going to be in this game, as neither of these teams necessarily elicit a lot of confidence. For East Carolina, mid-tempo team, 141st in terms of total possessions range. Rice, 209th, so neither team is really going to be pushing a lot of tempo, and I don't expect a ton of turnovers being generated by these teams. They're both between 197th and 199th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They both generate turnover at 16.3% of their possessions, but for East Carolina, I couldn't set them as a bigger favorite because it's hard to trust in a team that's 359th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. I recognize that Rice has been an awful offense away from home. Rice actually shoots 38.4% from 3-point range at home, 33.6% away from home, and both of these teams have their turnover issues of their own on offense. So with two defenses that don't generate a ton of turnovers, it's going to be interesting to look at there. Rice is 228th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. East Carolina is 231st. It feels like you're looking in the mirror at these two teams, other than Rice being the better three-point shooting team, and this is a Rice team that, again, 263rd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, falls a darn near 300th away from home, but I do like the overall backcourt that you got for this Rice team, as you've got Troy Bordenot. He comes over from USC Upstate, leading the way, 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists. He shoots about 35% from three. Jalen Smith and Nick Anderson combined to shoot 40.5% from the outside. Between the two of them, you're getting about 26.5 points per game. You've been able to get some good ancillary rebounders like Jimmy Oldakun along with Stephen Giwa. They've been able to combine for 9 rebounds per game. Neither gives you over 5 points per contest. And then Andrew Akuchi has been able to step up. He's been able to give you a few rebounds as well. And East Carolina has been a solid team on the glass. This is an East Carolina team that they've been able to do a nice job grabbing some second and third chances. Top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, with Jordan Riley leading the way, 21.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 28.5% from three-point range. And you've actually had Dimitri Gardner be able to knock down a few threes when he's been healthy. He's been able to come in there, give you double figures in each out of his last 3 games, and he's actually shooting 53% from three. He is the only guy on the roster that shoots over 28% from three, by the way, and Giovanni Amarushu has been able to give you 10 boards per contest, but for East Carolina, this also being a team that just frankly doesn't do a great job in terms of guarding the arc. They're outside the top 275 with that regard. They also are outside the top 300 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. I think that causes for a bit more of a slog of a game. Semi-total 139. I like the under end with Rice pretty much anything above a point, willing to take it with them. 689, 690 on the card. Fordham is going to be playing against LaSalle. LaSalle is exploring a cover as a 4.5 point underdog. 131.5 is the total line. I'm going to be willing to lay it for them. I did set them as a 6.5 point favorite. Both of these teams are having their offensive deficiencies, with Fordham 220th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. LaSalle 298th. Right now, what is really killing LaSalle is that they're just unable to take care of the ball, as in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they're a nice hearty 314th at all of college basketball. And not that Fordham is laying the world on fire at 222nd, but more clean possessions for them. I do think that Fordham, who's got a nice go-to scorer, a guy that's able to average 16 points per contest, comes over from Iona. DeJour Reeves leading the way. I think that's going to be big. He's actually up to 17.5 points per game. He's only been able to shoot about 29.2% from three-point range. But again, I do think that's going to go northward for a Fordham team that only shooting 27.1% from three-point range at home. He's been a better shooter throughout his career in LaSalle. It's not like they're shooting it well. 29.3% from three-point range away from home. You got two teams that are not looking to push tempo whatsoever. LaSalle 324th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Fordham 355th. So I think that you get a massive slug of a game. I'm in on the under. I saw my total at a 128.5. And for this Fordham team, they've been at a top 25 team with regards to overall rebound percentage, which is supposed to be the forte of LaSalle. Raquel Schulte has been able to give you about 11 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. They've dealt with an injury to Jack Whitborn throughout much of the season, but he's back, and in 4 out of his last 5 games, he's been able to give you at least 6 rebounds, 11 plus rebounds in 3 of the last 4. So he's really been able to excel on that front. 6'10" big man that comes over from UC Riverside, followed Mike Payo, so that's going to be big. Akira Jacobs has been able to do a nice job, and he's got a teammate from Hawaii, Marcus Green, that followed on over to Fordham as well. They've been able to combine for about 13 points per contest. And on the flip side, for LaSalle, you just don't have that go-to scorer for this team. You've only got really one guy that's been fully healthy all season long, give you double figures. That'd be Jaden Marshall, 13.5 points per game. Now, Jerome Brewer has been in and out of the lineup and should be good to go in this one. He's been hit or miss ever since coming off of injury, but has been able to score in double figures in now 3 of the last 5 games. And for Marshall, he shoots 36% from 3. With Brewer, doesn't really pop out well from 3, but does give you about 4.5 rebounds per game for LaSalle. This has been a top 175 team with regards to overall rebound percentage, but they're giving it up from 3. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 300 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and outside the top 240 in opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So it's been all sorts of ghastly on that front, with Fordham doing the better job in terms of taking care of the ball. I think that you get a slog. I think the Fordham wins out. I set my line at 6.5, so one to lay it here with Fordham. In on the under, I did set my total at a 128.5. 691, 692 on the card. Florida International is going to be playing against Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State, an underdog of 4.5 points to this game. It is 148.5 to 149, and I did set my total at 145. I do like the under, and you are going to have a massive tempo war in this game, as you've got a Florida National team that is looking to crank up the tempo. They're about 38th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And then for Jacksonville State, this is always a team that under Ray Harper, they're looking to play good, rock-solid defense, and they are looking to turn games into a big, giant slog, as right now they are about 345th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Florida National, much better three-point shooting team than they have been in the past. They shoot 34.9% from three-point range, 38% at home, compared to about 31.5% away from home. And for Jacksonville State, they do have a really nice go-to scorer in Mustafa Mustafa El Montequil. He comes over from Louisiana, and he's been giving the team 18.5 points, 7.5 boards. Only shoots about 31% from 3, but AC Bryant shoots 42% from 3, 13.5 points per game. Jamar Franklin, he's been a little bit in and out of the lineup. When he's been in the lineup, he's been a mid-30s three-point shooter and should be good to go in this one, though he has been rather limited ever since coming back from injury. Should be a little bit closer to 100% in this game, but additionally, Jacoby Hill has been able to shoot 41% from 3. He gives you about 8.5 points per game, but this is a Jacksonville State team that, even though their percentages are really good, they just don't really put you under duress. They're outside the top 245 in terms of their turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and it's a Jacksonville State team that is going to have a tough time with the Florida National bunch. Has been pretty solid in terms of giving themselves some second and third chances. They're 103rd in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, for Jacksonville State, they're only about 198th, so they're not giving themselves a whole lot of second and third chances. And then additionally, you've got the former Meet Me Roadrunner who's been helping out Florida National as they've been able to get about 17.5 points, 6.5 boards out of Corey Stevenson. He shoots 40% from 3. Julian Mackey shoots 40% from 3, 13 points per contest. This is a Florida National team that's going to put you under duress. They are a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. That's been a little bit of kryptonite for this Jacksonville State team. Even though they do a solid job in terms of limiting possessions in a game, they don't necessarily keep them clean. They're about 188th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and this is a Jacksonville State team that has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of guarding the three-point line. For Jacksonville State, right now they're allowing teams to shoot about 33.2% from three-pointers, but that goes up to 33.6% away from them. I do think that Florida National is going to be able to find a way to succeed or get the job done, even though they do shoot 67.3% of the free throw line. That's a big issue, but you do have Zwadi Jackson is able to give you 10.5 points in a pressure spot. He shoots 83% at the free throw line, and additionally, you've been able to get better rebounding with having the likes of Larry Okiani, allowing Eric Dembai be able to combine for about 13 or so rebounds per game. So Florida National is a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. And on the under, set my total at a 145. 693, 694 on the card. Auburn is going to be playing us at Texas. And Texas, they are back to being an underdog here of 6 to 6.5 points. So on this game, 158.5 to 159.5. And I made Auburn the favorite of 5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Texas. One thing that Texas has been able to do a pretty solid job of is being able to win the battle on the glass, as this team is not allowing a whole heck of a lot of second and third chances. As Auburn bunch, they are allowing a lot of second and third chances, as currently they are 188th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Texas bunch that has been far better with that regard. They're allowing teams to grab only about 25.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is 53rd in all of college basketball. And this is an Auburn team that has been not great on defense, outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they have been able to excel on offense. They're 31st in the country in terms of points per possession, even with Taj Pettiford, in my opinion, being a disappointment. You look at the raw numbers, he's giving out 3 assists per contest. He's throwing in there about 14 points per game, but he's shooting 27% from three-point range. It's really been Keyshawn Hall's team, as he's given the team 20.5 points, 7.5 boards. He shoots 41% from three-point range for an Auburn team that they're efficient on offense, despite only shooting about 32.5% from 3. They value the ball, top 100 team with this regard, and this is an Auburn team that has been a top 35 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. So you've got a Texas team that does a great job preventing those second and third chances, an Auburn team that feasts on them, but Texas, they themselves have been a top 50 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage as well, so I think that keeps them lively, with Mateus Volkatatis being able to give you 15 points, 7 boards per contest. Dalen Swain, who follows Sean Miller on over from Xavier, 17 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists, doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3, but Draymond Mark is starting to find it in conference play. He's been shooting over 40% from 3 with 18 points per game overall for the season. Just 14 points on 33% three-point shooting. And Jordan Pope, 13 points. He gives you 36% three-point shooting for a Texas team that's not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis, but they've done a good job locking down on the inside. Top 50 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Where they can be hurt is with opponents' three-point shooting, but same goes for Auburn. Auburn is 210th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Texas is 222nd, and Auburn not necessarily a team that lets it fly a ton from three-point range, but I do think that Texas holds in there, and I do think that this is going to be a game with a bunch of clean possessions and an Auburn team that is looking to run total possessions per game 96th in the country. That does go over. So set a total of 161. I like the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points here with Texas, set them as a 5-point dog. 695, 696. IU Indy is on the road against Robert Morris, and old Bobby Morris is a favorite of 9.5 points. 159 to 159.5 is the total, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Robert Morris. I did set them as a 4 14.5-point favorite with Robert Morris. They should be able to take advantage of an IU Indy team that they just always gamble for turnovers. IU Indy, top 45 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but outside the top 355 in opponent's three-point shooting percentage, outside the top 355 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and that last part is especially big because Robert Morris, 11th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They grab about 36.8% of their misses as an offensive rebound, as you've got a pair of guys and Mr. Good along Dakota Shatakulis, who have been able to do a great job with that regard. Deshaun Good, 15 points, 9 boards. He also shoots 64% from 3-pointers, and then Shatakulis, 11 points, 7 boards. He doesn't pop it from 3, but Ryan Prather, after a rough start to the season from the outside, he's got to give you 14.8 points per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and then you've been able to have Josh Hill come on strong, be able to give you about 8 points, 4.5 rebounds, so he does some nice mixing and shaking for this team, and this is a bunch, and Robert Morris has been about country average in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They really excel on the glass. Now they have been sloppy with their Robert Morris hovering right around about 300th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. IU Indy is going to look to gun it 5th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Robert Morris, more of a mid-tempo team. They're about 223rd in terms of total possessions per game, and while IU Indy has been slowed down a little bit more in conference play, still in conference play, this is a team that's scoring over 78 points per contest, and they're giving up a nice hearty 85 points per contest. And for IU Indy, you do have a nice go-to scorer in Kyler D'Agostino, shooting 40% from 3, 18.5 points per contest, but you have 2 guys on the roster that are really giving you over 3.5 rebounds per game, Finley Woodyard along Jackson Edwards, and these 2 guys combine for a little bit over 20 points, 10.3 rebounds per game, but Woodyard is able to give you 5.5 assists per game, and IU Indy doesn't do the world's worst job in terms of taking care of the ball, but they take a lot of threes. They only shoot about 31.5% from the outside, pretty solid with their 2-point shooting percentage, a top 100 team, but with the way that they get just totally lambasted in pretty much every facet of defense other than generating turnovers, I think that Robert Morris has their way in this game. As I did set my line at 14.5, I'm going to be willing to lay with Robert Morris, and I'm going to be in on the over total of a 170.5 is what I set it at, by the way. Last time these 2 teams played, Robert Morris did lose that game 96-93, so a little bit of a revenge spot as well. 697, 698 on the card. Xavier is going to be on the road against Seton, and Seton does find themselves as a mid-tier favorite here of 7 to 7.5 points. 144.5 is the total. I'm going to be in on the under. I did set my total at a 140. You've got a Xavier team that's really looking to push tempo right now. They're up to about 54th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Seton is the exact opposite. They are 292nd in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, and Seton just not clicking on all cylinders on offense. They're outside the top 210 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis at home, and Xavier, they're more around about 172nd in the country in terms of points per possession, and for Xavier, they do a nice job taking care of the ball. They're a top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they don't allow you to get second and third chances. Xavier is 26th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. It's a Seton team that they will give up a few second and third chances, 162nd with that regard, but for one, this is a Xavier team that just is not executing on the inside. They are 279th in all of college basketball in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. Seton somehow actually worse. At home, they're a bottom 30 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage. That said, this is a Seton team that they do a pretty solid job in terms of fighting for some second and third chances. Seton 36th in the country in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, and this is a Seton team that they're just making games big, giant slugs with the way that they generate turnovers. This team is 13th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. That goes into the top 12 when they are at home, and they just don't allow you very good looks whatsoever. With regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they've been able to do a nice job locking down there, as right now for Seton, they're checking in 60th in the country. Teams only shoot about 31% from 3-point against them, with Xavier doing a not so great job on the inside. That's going to be able to help them out quite a bit, and for Xavier, you've had a few guys be able to step up for the team, mainly Trey Carrolling all the way to give you 18 points, 5.5 boards, and he shoots 34.5% from 3, and then Jovan Milosevic, he's been able to give you 11.5 points, shoots 42% from 3, all right, that's his actual name. He's been all right with his 3-point shooting at 45.6%. I would actually say he's a little bit better than all right with that regard, but it is a Xavier team that they've been getting lambasted on the inside. They're outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're not the world's worst 3-point shooting defense, but they're certainly leaving something to be desired there, as for Xavier, 195th in the country, they allow opponents to shoot 34.3% from 3, and with Seton, I do think that even though their execution down low has been a little bit rough on the offensive side of things, they are still going to be able to generate those second and third chances with having a guy in Stephon Payne, the Payne train, give you 7.5 boards, a block and a half per contest with 7 points per game. Najai Hines, 6.5 points, 6 rebounds. And then you've got a few guys who have been able to light it up from three-point range. TJ Simpkins shoots 40% from three with his 7.5 points per contest. AJ Sam McCray, a 35% three-point shooter with 12 points per game. In a pressure spot, Seton, neither here nor there with their three-point shooting at 72.5% at the charity stripe. It's a Xavier team that they shoot only about 70.2%. I think that Seton gets their defensive style, makes this a little bit of a grimier game, and pulls it out. I'm willing to lay up to 7.5 here with Seton. Made them an 8-point favorite, and I like the under. I saw my total at a 140. 699, 700 on the card. It is Drake, and they're going to be playing with Evansville, and the Purple Aces of Evansville are an underdog of 9.5 points. 140.5 to 141 is the total, and with the Drake, I did set them as a favorite of 9.5 points. So right now, we're going to be waiting for a little bit of line movement. I was seeing some 9s earlier, and would be willing to lay up to a 9 with the Drake. And with Drake, they've been able to do a solid job in terms of holding up with the little things, and Evansville, it's just all going rough for them. This is a Drake team that, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they are outside the top 3, and that's going to be much needed for an Evansville offense that right now 345th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Drake, they're doing great work in terms of taking care of the ball. They're 46th in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and this is a Drake team that's been able to do a nice job lighting up from three. They're a top 110 team, shooting about 35.3% from three, and that goes to 40.3% in their home games. And for Evansville, it's just really been a compoundment of bad for them because they're without their top rebounder and top scorer in Connor Turnbull. For the season, it's been able to give you 12.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. They've been missing him in the last 6 games, so that means that A.J. Casey is right now your lone double-figure scorer with about 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. This is an Evansville team that is already working with a limited amount of possessions. 204th in terms of total possessions per game. You compound that with the fact that they just turned the ball over a ton. Very few scoring opportunities, and Drake, relatively mid-tempo team. They're about 199th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a Drake team that if you really want to beat them, you have to do so from the outside. For Drake, they have been giving up a lot of opportunities from three-point range. Right now, they're allowing teams to shoot in the neighborhood about 34.9% from three-point range in their home games. That's outside the top 225, and right now, Evansville shoots 30.8% from three-point range. That's outside the top 3 in all of college basketball. Joshua Hughes is able to give you a bit of something, 37.5% three-point shooter, 9.5 points per contest, but I do think that for Drake, at a 9 or less, I am going to be willing to lay it, even though it has been a team that they themselves have a little bit of sketchiness with regards to their low post defense. At home, they've been outside the top 2 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but you do have Jalen Quinn, who's been able to give you 18.5 points, 4 boards, and he shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Jashawn Thomas, who has been able to give you 39% three-point shooting, 11 points per contest. It's a Drake team that has been a top 225 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, or overall rebound percentage hovering right around about 200, so they need to work on that a little bit. But with Evansville down their top rebounder, that's going to matter a little bit less, and Wilkins Exacte being able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game. I do think that that's just enough for this Drake team to be able to get it done. Want to lay up to 9 with them. Think that you're in for a slog of a game with Evansville not doing their part with the total. Semi-total 137.5, so I'm in on the under to go along. Drake willing to lay up to 9 with them. 701, 702. It's Old Dominion on the road against Arkansas State. Arkansas State is a favorite here of 8.5 points. 161 to 161.5 is the total. I said Old Dominion as an underdog of 10 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's an Old Dominion team that has been playing at a rather brisk pace. 112th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Not super duper fast, but certainly not slow. Arkansas State, they are very much looking to push tempo. They're 26th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Arkansas State, the three-point shooting percentages are getting better. They are inside the top 275 with their three-point shooting percentage on offense, and on defense, teams are shooting just 27.2% from three-point range against them. Meanwhile, Old Dominion has been actually a really good three-point shooting defense, 70th in the country, but they allow opponents to shoot 24.3% from three-point range at home. That goes up to about 34.7% away from home, and it's a Old Dominion team that's just not going to give you any sort of second and third chances. 335th in the country in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, Arkansas State, they have to make do for their turnovers. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They make up for it by grabbing 36.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. And while Arkansas State has had such a rough time taking care of the ball, Old Dominion outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You do have Casey Shaw, who's been able to supply 16.5 points, 4 boards per contest. LJ Thomas, he's a do-it-all player, 11 points. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3, 32%. And Old Dominion has had Jordan Battle give you 40% three-point shooting, 13.5 points. He's their main scorer, but team just has a lot of, shall we say, roughness all across the roster. As right now you've got Caleb Swanton-Roger, the true 7-footer, give you just 7.5 rebounds per game. He seems to have regressed from last season. And for Arkansas State right now, it's just sort of a whole is greater than some of its parts collective with this offense. Joey Chimea, who was missing for about 10 games earlier in the season, he's come back. He's really been your top 3-point shooter at 38.5% 3-point shooting, and that's been a big reason why Arkansas State has been able to elevate with that 3-point shooting. But as of right now for Arkansas State, you've got, I'm not even kidding when I say this, 9 different guys between 5.4 and 12 points per contest, with Kyle Ayman give you 12 points per game. He's been the main guy, and in a pressure spot, Arkansas State, they shoot in the top 40 with their free throw shooting percentage at 77%, with the way that they control the boards and the turnovers being less of an issue against Old Dominion. Think that they go out there and get the job done. I said Arkansas State is a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set a total here of a 160. I just think that Arkansas State limiting Old Dominion second and third chances is just enough to be able to keep it under. So in on the under, and we'll lay with Arkansas State. 7-3, 7-4 on the card. It is Denver, and they're going to be on the road against Kansas City. UMKC is a 4.5-point home underdog. 161.5 to 162 is the total, and I'm going to take an under with Denver. I set this total at a 159 to recognize that Denver, I believe, has played a 1 under thus far this season, but UMKC has been absolutely terrible on offense. They're well outside the top 3 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Starting to feel it a little bit more from 3-point range, but boy, oh boy, they have not been able to take care of the ball outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. You still look at their overall 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Kansas City team that they check in at a nice hearty 340th, shooting 28.9% from 3-point range at home. Meanwhile, it's a Denver team that they do experience quite a bit of a fall off with their 3-point shooting away from home, shooting just 33.2% in a roadside shoot score venue, 42.6% at home, as it's a Denver team that is not super slow, not super fast, 148th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Kansas City has actually looked to push quite a bit of tempo, 94th in the country with that regard, but they're just squandering possession after possession. As for Kansas City, you just have not been able to find as much, shall we say, offensive rebounding as the team has had in the past as well. Typically, Marvin Menzies teams, they're slow, they really base themselves on good low post defense, and you've got Chris Dockery and Jerome Palm, who've been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, and between the two of them, you only get about 14 to 15 points per contest. Jason Petty, he's been able to give you 11 points. He shoots 32% from 3, and now you do have Carmelo Birchall along with Kashim Grady combined shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range, combined over 23 points per contest between the two of them, but still, it's a UMKC offense that's just not been able to get out of neutral all season long. Also outside the top 3 in both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Denver, they've been outside the top 340 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 340 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 310 opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. But Carson Johnson, 19 points per contest, shoots 43% from 3-point range. It's a Denver team that they do allow quite a few second and third chances, but so does UMKC. So it's going to be a situation of something's got to give, and I do think that with this Denver team not being as prolific away from home with their offense, but this being a Kansas City team that's not been able to just have clean possessions all season long, that you get an under. Set by total 159. So I mean, on the under in a pressure spot, it's a Denver team that they do shoot 77% of the free throw line. That's the top 40 mark in the country. So made Denver the 5-point favorite. Also want to lay with Denver to go along with that under. 7-5, 7-6. Belmont is on the road against Valparaiso, and Valparaiso just find themselves as a home underdog of 4.5 points. 144.5 to 145.5 is the total line for Belmont. I did set them as a favorite of 8 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Belmont team that is averaging 8.7 points fewer per 100 possessions allowed away from home rather than at home. They're a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home, and they do shoot over 42.2% from 3-point range away from home. That is numero tres in all of college basketball. Tyler Lundblade, Sam Orme, these guys have been incredible, combining for about 27.5 points per contest. With Lundblade, he shoots 39% from 3-point range. You do have a Belmont team that in a pressure spot, they do shoot just 67.5%, and at the free throw line, that's a little bit of an issue, but they also execute down low. This Belmont team is a top 20 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Orme and Drew Skronowski combined for 12.2 rebounds per game. Skronowski throws in there about 11 points per contest, and Nick McLean, though he does have a little bit of a turnover concern. This is a Belmont team that has been outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. They turn the ball over 13.2 times per contest, but he does give you 6.3 assists, 4.5 boards, 10.5 points, and he shoots 45% from 3-point range. And it's a Valparaiso team that's neither here nor there in terms of their ability to be able to generate turnovers. For Valparaiso, just a hair outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You do have Owen Dees, who's giving you all these 14 points, and right now 41.6% 30% three-point shooting, but Valparaiso as a whole, they have been a team that's been outside the top 150 in terms of points per possession, even though they take care of the ball at home. They're a top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they are not executing inside. They're outside the top 3 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, shooting just 32.5% from three-point range overall. They've been a relatively solid team in terms of shutting you down from three-point range, though. They're not allowing a lot of good open looks. Right now, teams from three-point range, they shoot less than 32.5% against them. A little bit of an interesting home and road split with this Valparaiso team, as well as Valparaiso is allowing teams to shoot about 28.5% from three-point range at home compared to 33% away from home. And it's a Belmont team that they themselves are right now allowing teams to shoot just 30.8% away from home against them compared to 37% at home. So I do think that the Belmont defense does iron out a little bit, but even if it does iron out, even though Belmont does have a few turnover woes, I do think that they execute inside, get the job done against a Valparaiso team in which you really just don't have that go-to guy for them right now. You do have a guy in Rakeem Chaney who's been able to give you about 9.5 points per contest. JT Pettigrew has been able to give you 11 points per contest as well, but I mean, it's been a very sketchy team, and with Belmont having all their firepower, I do think that they get the job done. And Belmont, top 120 team in terms of total possessions per game, so playing at a pace. I did set my total 150. I'm going to be in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 7.5 here with Belmont. 707, 708 on the card. South Dakota State, they are on the road against Omaha, and Omaha, set height, they do find themselves as a very slim home underdog, 1.5 to 2-point home underdogs. Total on this game, 148.5, and I made a total of a 150.5. I'm going to be in on the over. You've got an Omaha team that is playing not necessarily slow or fast, 188th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. South Dakota State has dialed it back a little bit, 222nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and you're not going to get a lot of second and third chances in this game. Omaha, well outside the top 275 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. South Dakota State, they've been a top 110 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. It's an Omaha bunch that may have been giving up a few second and third chances, but not so bad at home. At home, 24.2% of opponents' missed shots become an offensive rebound. That's a top 150 mark, and for Omaha, the offense has really been able to accelerate since the Miami transfer has gone in, and Paul DeBourget, he missed the first, I would say, like 13 or so games of the season, and since he's gotten out there on the floor, he's averaging 19.5 points, 2.3 assists, a steal on 46% three-point shooting. That helps out Lance Waddles, Tony Osborne, who've been able to combine for about 28 points between the two of them. They shoot in that pocket about 38.5 to 39% from three-point range. It's an Omaha team that, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, back in the top 150 this season, but they've really been giving it up on defense. They are currently outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Not bad with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've been a top 175 team with that regard, but that said, this is a South Dakota State team that they've been looking to drive the ball a little bit more down low, and they become a top 150 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, with having a quartet of guys, Kalen Gary, Joe Saylor, Jaden Jackson, and Damian Wilkerson, give you between 10.4 and 13.4 points per game, with Saylor being that top scorer and top three-point shooter at 41.5% from the outside. South Dakota State doing a relatively solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, top 200 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Neither team is really going to put you under duress in terms of generating turnovers, and for the South Dakota State team, country average team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage in a pressure spot. It is a South Dakota State team that they only shoot about 68.5% of the free throw line. That's just a hair above the top 300 in all of college basketball. Omaha's been a little bit better at 71.7%, but not necessarily trustworthy there. I do think that South Dakota State has enough weapons to be able to get it done, even with DeBourget out there. And I do think that South Dakota State, being the stronger, shall we say, interior team, that's going to be able to win out in this spot. A game where I do think that offensive execution is going to be there. Semi-total 150.5, so I like the overhand with South Dakota State. Willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 709, 710 on the card. Marshall is on the road against Texas State. Texas State is doing the Texas 2.5 step as they're 2.5-point home underdogs. So on this game, it is 148.5. I did set my line at Marshall being a 2.5-point favorite, and I set my total at a 148.5. Right now, I'm seeing a 3 on Marshall. Will be willing to take Texas State there, and then a 148 or less. I'm going to be in on the over. 149 or higher the under. I haven't really seen anything other than a 148.5 to this point, but I mean, for this Marshall team, they play at a pretty good pace. Not necessarily super duper fast, but 92nd in terms of total possessions per game. And Texas State has sped themselves up a little bit as well. They're up to about 203rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. The thing with Texas State is that they play games with a lot of dead possessions. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they are 320th in all of college basketball. They actually take care of the ball a lot better when they're away from them rather than at home, strangely, and they have been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Marshall, they've had a tough time taking care of the ball. They're about 240th in the country in terms of turnovers per possession, and Marshall, a great three-point shooting team, 37.3% from the outside, 34th in the country, and you've got a Texas State team that they're looking to pile drive the ball down low. Texas State, second in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point line, and For Marshall, they do find themselves 58th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but this is a Texas State team that when they need to pop it from 3-point range, they do have a guy in Mark Drone that's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. He's done a nice job giving you about 13 points per contest. You've got Caden Gums, who really doesn't give you a lot of scoring at like 7 or so points per contest, but he's been able to do a solid job being able to give you some facilitation with about 3.5 assists per game, and he's been able to shoot actually 44% from 3-point range himself, and it is a Texas State team that they have been outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but with their interior defense, they're more in the top 155 with that regard. And it's a Texas State team that has done a nice job in terms of owning the boards as well. They are a top 85 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Meanwhile, with Matthew Van Kamen down low for Marshall, he's a 7'4" big man that's able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest. He's really helped out the interior defense of Marshall. And for this Marshall bunch, they're a country average team in terms of guarding the 3-point line. And Marshall is going to give up a lot of second and third chances. They're going to generate for themselves a lot of second and third chances. With Marshall, in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, they've been one of the better mid-majors out there, as right now they're 75th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and away from home, they grab about 33.7% of their misses as an offensive rebound, top 25 mark in the country, but they're 228th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. So I do think that those second and third chances help out Texas State, help them remain lively, and if you do find yourself in a pressure spot, it's a Marshall team that they shoot about 73.8% at the free throw line. Jalen Spears has been able to give you 15 points, 5.5 assists, shoots 37% from 3, while Fricks more on 36% from 3 with 14.5 points per contest. So I do think that for Marshall, they should be a little bit of a favorite here. I'd be willing to lay up to 2 with them, but right now I'm seeing 3+. I would be willing to take the points with Texas State, and then 148 or less in on the over, 149 or higher. The under 7-11, 7-12 on the card. North Texas is on the road against Tulsa, and the Tulsa Golden Hurricane are a 9.5 to a 10-point favorite. It's all this game between 141.5 to a 142.5, and I'm going to be in on this total under, as I set my total at a 133.5. Have a North Texas team that in a roadside-neutral venue has exceeded the 65-point plateau just once this far this season. And it's a North Texas team that has really been able to bear down with their defense. They're 310th of the country in terms of total possessions per game, so they're looking to play super slow, super controlled. They're a really good 3-point shooting defense for North Texas overall, 18th in the country at 29.6% in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And you take a look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in games strictly played away from home. It's a North Texas team that has been one of the most dominant teams in all of college basketball. As overall, they're 25th in the country. When you put them away from home, this actually ascended into the top 10, and it's a Tulsa team that's been able to hold up on defense as well. They're about 152nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been pretty solid in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances. Top 85 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They do a solid job giving themselves a few second and third chances as well. At home, they grab about 32.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, so that's the top 110 mark. But for Tulsa, what they really do a great job of is just lighting it up on offense. Top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, third in the country in their 3-point shooting percentage at 41%. So it's going to be a little bit of strength on strength, and I did set Tulsa here as an 11.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number, even though I know that North Texas is going to do a great job with that defense, mainly because I just have no faith in this North Texas team being able to execute on offense. I mentioned how great they are with regards to their defense when they're away from home, but they've only exceeded 65 points, as I alluded to, once when they've been away from home. And if you look at just points scored on a per possession basis, this North Texas team overall is 306th in all of college basketball, but you put them in a roadside-neutral venue, that is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. For North Texas, you've been able to have a few guys be able to help you out, but ever since they had the injury to Will McClendon, who comes over from San Jose State, that's been rough. Deshaun Stevenson has had to headline things with 17 points. He shoots about 32% from 3. You've been able to get David Terrell going for about 13 points, 5 assists per contest, but he shoots about 30% from 3 as well. North Texas outside the top 275 with their own ball security. Now they have been a top 25 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so lots of dead possessions in their games. Meanwhile, for Tulsa, you've got Miles Barnstable, so he give you 15 points. Shoots 45% from 3 points, 94% of the charity stripe. And North Texas not afraid to foul. And right now for Tulsa, they're a top 5 team of the country, shooting 79.5% at the free throw line. David Green, after a rough start to the season, he's shooting 39.5% from 3 with 16.5 points per contest. And in conference play, 7 games, 60% 3-point shooting. That certainly is going to go down a little bit, but you've had Jalen DeWall, who's been able to give you 8 points shooting, 38.5% from 3, ascended double figures here in conference play. Ian Smichael, Roma Dean, they've been able to combine for about 8 rebounds per game as more ancillary scorers, and I do think that Tulsa finds a way to get the job done against the North Texas team that is just not executed away from home. So set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm in on the under. Set my total at 133.5. 713, 714. Sam Houston State is going to be on the road against Missouri State, and Missouri State is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 147.5 to a 149, and I set my total at a 148.5, so at a 147.5, 148, I'm going to be in on the over, but I feel like Sam Houston State should be the favorite here. Made them a favorite of 4.5 points, as a matter of fact. I'm going to be taking them on the money line. Sam Houston State just have a nice advantage on the glass. They've been a top 75 team in terms of their overall offensive rebound percentage, and we're around about 155th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Missouri State, they're allowing opponents at home to grab 31% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. I just really like this collective of Sam Houston State. Right now, you've got essentially 7 different guys that give between 8.1 and 13.6 points per game, with Boboy King, the NC Central transfer, really headlining things right now. 13.5 points, shoots 37% from 3, but Kashe not. He shoots 50% from 3, 2.3 steals, 2.5 assists, 7 rebounds, 11 points per contest. These guys have all been rock solid, and then TCU transfer Isaiah Manning is dealt with a little bit of an injury. Should be good to go in this game with about 10.5 points per contest, but even if you don't have him out there, you just have guys upon guys. They're able to give you good production. Now, it is a Sam Houston State team that they've been allowing a lot of second and third chances as well. They're outside the top 150 in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, and this is a bunch that they can be at a little bit more on the inside. They're outside the top 125 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage away from home, but that said, it's a Missouri State team that has been just really, really awful with their 3-point shooting this season. They have fallen outside the top 250 this season after they shot as a collective darn near 36% 8 seasons ago. As a matter of fact, outside the top 300 with their 3-point shooting percentage, though Keith Palak has been able to give you 18 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. You've got Kobe Williams, who generates for the team about 14 points per game, and for Missouri State, they're doing a solid job taking care of the ball. Top 200 team, there's a few turnovers on a per possession basis, but with the way that they've been outside the top 200 with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage defense, Amari Kuljajovic, one of their top rebounders, went down early on during the season, so Michael Osibanusu, with his 14 points, steal and a half, 7 rebounds per game, he's had to be a little bit of a do-it-all guy, but the pitfall that we're seeing with the Missouri State, not necessarily being able to pop it from 3, I think it's going to be big in this game, and it's going to be an interesting tempo war as well. So Missouri State looking to play relatively slow and controlled, 256th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Sam Houston, they're looking to pump it up at 58th, but do think that Sam Houston State with their collective wins out at 148 or less in on the over, and with Sam Houston State, I'm going to take them on the money line, set them as a 4.5 point favorite. 7-15, 7-16, UAB is on the road against UT San Antonio. Meet the Roadrunners are an underdog of 13.5 to 14 points. Totals between 151.5 to a 153.5, and I set my line at 16. I'm going to be one away with UAB. Now UAB outside the top 325 with their 3-point shooting percentage, but this UAB team has been very solid on the glass. They're right now 25th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and UT San Antonio, they allow opponents to grab 35.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. UT San Antonio is in the bottom 20 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and though UAB has such a rough go of it from 3-point range, they're a top 10 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. They do a nice job giving themselves second and third chances, top 50 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and a top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers per possession, with having a pair of guys in Jacob Meyer and Chance Westery combined for 29 points per contest. Neither shoot it well from 3, but you do get 4.5 assists per game out of Westery. You've been able to find a little bit of 3-point shooting out of Sublime London, who's been able to shoot 36% from 3, only about 5 points per contest, but for this UTSA team, even though you do have a few, shall we say, issues with regards to UAB, with regards to our perimeter offense, everything else is pretty solid. And for UT San Antonio, they've got 2 guys that are giving you double figures. You've got Jameer Simpson giving you 15.5 points, 4 boards, shoots 31% from 3 for a team that is somehow, someway even worse than UAB with their 3-point shooting at 28.1%. If you include D1 and non-D1 games, that is 361st in all of college basketball. You've been able to have Austin Nunez be able to give you 10.5 points. He shoots 26% from 3-point range. It is a group that has been a top 175 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they're also just getting land base and giving up the second and third chances that they do. They're now outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 200th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're outside the top 330 in terms of both their 3-point shooting offense and their 2-point shooting offense, so they're really generating no offense whatsoever here, but they are a team that's going to be willing to push some tempo, and that's going to be all up you out with the total for UTSA. They're 128th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UAB, they are number 30 in the country, so a very interesting circumstance here. I did set my total at a 152. Right now, we're between a 151.5 to a 153.5. Personally, at a 153 or higher, I'm going to be looking at the under just because I don't think that UTSA does their part with this total, so I'm looking under, and with UAB, one to lay up to 15.5 with them. 7-17, 7-18, it is DePaul, and they're going to be on the road against Georgetown, and Georgetown does find themselves as a 4.5 point favorite. Totals between 140.5 to a 141.5, and For Georgetown, I did set them as a 5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 4.5. It is a DePaul team that's been able to do a pretty solid job stepping up on defense. They will allow a few second and third chances. They, in a road/score venue, are outside the top 125 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, with opponents grabbing 30.9% of their misses as an offensive rebound. But still, overall on defense, DePaul is actually 46th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, albeit they give up 15.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home. And Georgetown likes today's goal defense, 179th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and bigger for Georgetown. They're just 275th with their 3-point shooting percentage, but 34.2% at home, 28.7% in a road or neutral court venue. And this is a Georgetown team which has one clear strength: they don't hurt themselves in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Georgetown 30th in the country. They only turn the ball over on about 14% of possessions. DePaul's more around about 220th, and away from home, this goes outside the top 240. And for DePaul, they've been able to have CJ Gunn do a nice job of just gunning it with regards to his scoring. He's the top man with about 14.5 points, 3.5 boards, shoots 35% for three, but it's a DePaul group that has been outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 200 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, 33.9% from three is country average. They don't grab a lot of second and third chances outside the top 230 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. You have been able to have someone like a line and blocker be able to give you 3.5 assists per contest help, and then a lot of mixing and matching with the likes of Brandon Macklin, RJ Smith, and then you throw in there Caleb Banks, give between 6.5 to 9 points per contest. But for Georgetown, now being able to get back Vincent Iwuchukwu, who missed 10 plus games earlier in the season, that is absolutely massive, as he has a true 7-footer, has been able to give you a steal per contest. He throws in there a little bit less than 10 points per game, but he does give you just a nice low post presence, a little bit over a block per contest. That helps out Julius Halafana, who's been able to give you about 10 points, 4.5 boards. He's just below a block per contest as well, but that takes a little bit of pressure off of KJ Lewis, Malik Mack, who combined for 29 points per game. Neither guy shoots it well from three at a combined about 31.5% from the outside, but for Georgetown, they should be able to maximize possessions. In a pressure spot, they shoot 73.5% the free throw line, top 150 mark there. They've been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. Both of these teams are not necessarily looking to push a ton of tempo, but neither are super slow. DePaul is about 206th in terms of total possessions per game. Georgetown 229. So circumstance where I did set my line at 5, I'm willing to lay Georgetown. I do like the under. I set my total at a 139, 719, 720. Louisiana Tech is on the road against UTEP. UTEP is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favor. 127.5 to 129 is the total, and I made a total of a 127. I'm in on the under. Neither team is looking to push tempo here. 359th in terms of total possessions per game for Louisiana Tech. UTEP is a little bit faster, but that's not saying much. They're at 332nd in the country, and neither of these teams have been able to do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. For UTEP, 272nd in terms of turnovers per possession. Louisiana Tech more around about 172nd. And to the credit of UTEP, they're always a team that does a solid job in terms of generating turnovers. Top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but for this UTEP team, they're not going to be able to find any good looks from three-point range, because Louisiana Tech, right now, they're a top 110 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and this is a UTEP team that sometimes they give it up from three-point range. Sure, 39th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. For Louisiana Tech, they always pride themselves on being able to dominate the glass, and they are a top 80 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, with having a pair of guys that combine for 14 rebounds per game in Caden Cooper, along with Avery Thomas, and then DJ Dudley and AJ Bates. They lead the backcourt with a combined 24.5 points per contest, and Dudley shoots 43% from three. Bates shoots 35.5% from three, but even with that, it's a Louisiana Tech team that they are outside the top 310 with their three-point shooting percentage at 30%. And in a pressure spot, they shoot 64.2% the free throw line. That is a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball, but they do an okay job in terms of taking care of the ball. And then for UTEP, you've got a bunch that has been led by a pair of guys in Jamal West and Elijah Jones, who've been able to combine for about 27.5 points per contest, with West, lone guy in the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, 6.7 boards per contest. Jones gives you about 4.5 rebounds per game, and between the two of them, they do shoot about 36.5% from three-point range, but still, they've been missing a lot of their open looks from three-point range. You've had Therese Watson not be able to get out there on the floor due to injury, and he was giving the team over 2 steals per contest, so that has hurt the defense quite a bit, and this is a team that's getting bludgeoned on the inside. They're outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and considering Louisiana Tech is as bad as they are with their 3-point shooting, that's going to help them out greatly, and it is a Louisiana Tech team that has been very strong on the inside. They're a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. This is a UTEP team that is a top 110 team in terms of percentage of their shots that do come from inside the 3-point line, so I do think that Louisiana Tech, with their defense, goes out there, gets the job done in a slog. Semi-total 127, so I'm in on the under, and Louisiana Tech on the money line, 721, 722. It is Stanford. They're going to be on the road against Miami, and Miami is a pretty good-sized favorite here of 8.5 to 9.5 points. 145.5 to 147 is the total, and by line 8.5. So at a 9+, that does become my buy point on Stanford. Now, Stanford is a bunch that's going to give up some looks from three-point range. Right now, they're allowing teams that shoot about 33.8% from three. That actually goes down to 31.9% away from home compared to 34.7% when they have been at home. And this is a Stanford group that has been just very funky with regards to those home run road splits, as they actually shoot better from three-point range when they're away from home. They are a top 90 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home. At home, that falls outside the top 180. But the one thing that this Stanford team has been able to do a relatively solid job of is generating turnovers. They're a top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. We've seen Stanford really push down their tempo. They're now outside the top 10 in terms of total possessions per game. Miami has bumped it up. Miami, in terms of total possessions per game, they find themselves about 103rd in all of college basketball, and with Malik Renew, give you 20+ points, 6+ rebounds per game, and Ernest Uday give you 9+ boards. It is the Stanford team that's going to be facing an uphill battle with regards to the rebounding battle. They're not going to grab a lot of second and third chances, but one thing that Stanford has been able to do a relatively solid job of, not allowing you to be able to grab second and third chances as well. With Stanford, in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, they do find themselves about 130th in the country. Teams are grabbing 27.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound, and they've got Abuka Okore, 21.5 points, only shoots about 29.5% from three, but it's been one of the more underrated freshmen in all of college basketball. And then you got Benny Gieler, who's been your main three-point shooter at 41% from three, 10 points per game. Chisholm Okpara, 4 boards, pair of assists, a steal, 14 points per game. Really like what these guys bring to the table for a Stanford team that's been a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Even a Miami team that is solid in terms of generating turnovers. Wouldn't necessarily call them overly prolific, but they're in the top 80 with this regard, and it is a Miami bunch that has been solid in terms of keeping teams out the free throw line, top 75 with that regard. But on top of Renew, along with Ernest Uday in the backcourt, you've got Trey Donaldson, give you 16 points, 6.5 assists, only about 2 turnovers per game, mid 33-point shooter. And Miami overall, they shoot about 34% from three, country average. They really look to make their hay on the inside. They've been a top 25 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. It's a Stanford defense that has been outside the top 200 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, well outside that, as a matter of fact, their own 2-point shooting percentage is outside the top 250. But I do think that with this being a little bit of an up-tempo game, that Stanford is going to be able to hold in there, and it's a Stanford team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of giving themselves a few second and third chances as well. And it is a Miami team that they themselves can have a few turnover woes. They've been outside the top 125 with regards to their own ball security. So in the end, I do think that Stanford is going to be able to hold in there, and do think they get plenty of scoring in this game. In on the over sub, I total 152.5, and I'm going to take 9+ here with Stanford. 723, 724. It's Minnesota, the state with the smallest strengths in the union. Minnesota on the road against Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a favorite of 8.5 points. Total is in the mid 140s, 145.5 to 146.5, and I made Wisconsin the 13.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Minnesota has some of the most demonstrative home and road splits away from the barn they're going to find in all of college basketball. For this Minnesota team, when they're at home, they're one of the best defenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball. 21st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 353rd in a road/neutral court venue. And you got a Wisconsin team that they just do the little things well. They're a top 20 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they're not giving up second and third chances. Top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They sink 77.5% of their free throws. That's a top 30 mark in the country. They're a top 75 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Country average with their 3-point shooting, but they do average more than 13 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. And they've got 2 headline scorers in John Blackwell and Nick Boyd, who've been able to combine for 38 points per contest. With Blackwell, he does shoot 37.5% from 3-point range, and then you've been able to have Noah Winter make it feel like winter for their opponents. 14 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Braden Carrington, he's been able to shoot about 42% from 3-point range as well. Wisconsin coming off that rough loss that we saw a few nights ago is going to be an issue, and Minnesota's going to have revenge on the mind. Last time these two teams played, we talked about it with Ben Wilson. Minnesota got essentially buzzer beaten, and that was a line that closed right around about 2 to 2.5. So that was a rough beat if you had Minnesota. But that said, you've got Cade Tyson, who does give you about 20 points on 40% 3-point shooting. It's a Minnesota team that's improving with their 3-point shooting percentage. It's right around 32.5%. They're barely inside the top 250 with that regard. But I mean, it's been creeping northward as the season has went along. And for Minnesota, the home and road splits on offense are very much less demonstrative than they are in defense. They're only averaging about 4.5 to 5 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. But it is a Minnesota team that's looking to play very slow and controlled, 330th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For this Wisconsin bunch, they've really bumped it up, 100th in terms of total possessions per game. For Minnesota, Jalen Crocker-Johnson has good versatility, 14 points, 7 boards, shoots about 34% from 3, but outside he and Cade Tyson, pretty much nobody else shoots above 31% from 3. You do have Isaac Uzama, Langston Reynolds combining for about 8.5 assists per game, and Minnesota not going to be put under duress. Wisconsin, not a team that generates a lot of turnovers, but in the end, I do think that for Minnesota, their defense is going to let them down away from home. I think that Wisconsin does the little things to be able to get it done, and I do think that Wisconsin is starting to dial it back just a little bit with that tempo. So if I told 143.5, I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be one to lay with Wisconsin. 725, 726. San Diego is on the road against Pepperdine. The Waves of Pepperdine are a 1.5 point home underdog. 149.5 to 150.5 is the total line. I said a total here of 142.5. I like the under for Pepperdine. This has not been a team that's been very prolific on offense and has not really looked to push a lot of tempo. 225th in terms of total possessions per game. San Diego is a very mid-tempo team, 146th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And San Diego, in terms of points per possession, they're pedestrian. 225th in the country. Pepperdine is worse than pedestrian. It's right now for our good friends Pepperdine, 333rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And if you look at home games and home games only, it's a Pepperdine team that's in the bottom 15 in the country in terms of points per possession. Now, they do have a guy in Styles Phipps who's been able to do a good job, give you over 5 assists per contest. He's got some really nice versatility as a main point guard with about 6 boards, 13.5 points per game. And then Danilo Dosic is a guy that at 6'10" is able to pop it from 3 at about 33%. But problem is, he's the best 3-point shooter on the team, as the team shoots 28.8% from 3-point range, where the San Diego team is very vulnerable. It's on the inside. San Diego is well outside the top 325 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. But Phipps, as a guard, is the only guy on the roster that gives you over 4.7 rebounds per game. You do have Javon Cooley, who gives you about 4.5 boards, 11.5 points per contest, but he's another guard. One thing that Pepperdine has done an okay job of is they shoot 76.8% of the free throw line. That's a top 50 mark in all of college basketball, but I do think that San Diego is going to be able to go out there, get it done. I set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them as a very, very small favorite in this spot, mainly because I just like the backcourt a little bit better. You've got Juan Sebastian Guadacito, along to Tunari Lane, who have been able to combine for about 20.5 points per contest, and these two guys combine to shoot 40% for 3. Tyler Johnson, 4.5 assists, 2.5 steals, 16 points per game, and one thing that San Diego has done a great job on defense, they're a top 65 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Pepperdine is outside the top 10 in terms of taking care of the ball, well over 13 turnovers per them, and I recognize that San Diego not going to do a great job on the glass, but neither is this Pepperdine team, and San Diego in a pressure spot, they do shoot 76.5% at the free throw line. They've been a country average team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage getting killed inside, but Pepperdine not executing inside as well. So I think that this is a lower scoring game. Somebody told 142.5. I like the under, and with San Diego, I'm going to be willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 727, 728. Illinois State is on the road against Murray State, and Murray State is a favorite here of 3.5 to 3 points. 159 to 159.5 is the total line. I made a total of 155. I'm in on the under. Illinois State has all of a sudden become a really good defensive team, while also being a solid offensive team for this Illinois State team overall. 96th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you take a look at them away from home, that actually ascends into the top 75, and Murray State has been able to really execute with their offense. 33rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, should be in for a bit of tempo war. Murray State is 37th in terms of total possessions per game. Illinois State 238th, but this is an Illinois State team that they're going to be right at home with a Murray State team that they make you drive the ball inside. As for Murray State, they are number 1 in the country in terms of opponents' field goal attempts that come from inside the 3-point line, but Illinois State, right now, they are overall 69th in the country with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. If you look at them away from home, this actually goes into the top 30 in all of college basketball. So Illinois State, they're very willing to have their offense flow on the inside, as you've been able to get good production out of Chase Walker, 13.5 points, 6 boards at 6'9". He's able to dominate the game. And then you've got a trio of guys, Tariq Coleman, Johnny Kinzinger, and Bowen Skunberg, who give you between 10.5 and 11.6 points per contest. Skunberg and Coleman both shoot about 41% from 3-point range. Kinzinger, he's fallen to 30% 3-point shooting after he was very prolific there last season, but you do have Skunberg giving you 4.5 rebounds per game. Ty Pence has been able to throw in there about 4.5 rebounds per game as well. They're not going to have quite the same low post presence as Murray State does with Fred King. King has been able to give you over 8 rebounds, block and half per contest. Chucks in there about 12 to 13 points per game, and Roman Doman has been very good at 6'9". True freshman has been able to give you 13.5 points, 5 boards, and he's right now shooting 42% from 3. Javon Jackson shoots 42% from 3. Mason Miller shoots about 41.5% from the outside, and it's a Murray State team that's been seeing their 3-point shooting dip just a little bit, but still, this has been a top 50 team in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage at home at 39.1%. They haven't necessarily been the same team away from home, but that said, this is an Illinois State team I think is going to do a great job of holding in there. You take a look at what Illinois State has been able to do on defense, and in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 38th in the country. I will say, though, they do have some bigger home and road splits themselves. They've been giving up over 24 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Murray State country average team about 168th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession possession basis, but this is an Illinois State team that I think that they're going to have a little bit of a tough time with Fred King. Even though Illinois State is going to be able to find some open looks on the inside, I think that they're going to be looking to slow this game down a little bit more, and I do think that Murray State is going to do a solid job from three-point range, and I do think that Murray State in a pressure spot can be able to close this thing out and get it done. They do shoot at the free throw line about 76%, so made Murray State the 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm going to be in on this total under semi-total at a 155. 729, 730. Wyoming is going to be on the road against Utah State, and Utah State finds themselves as a double-figure favorite here, as you're going to be laying 12.5 to 13 points. 151 to 151.5 is the total, and with Utah State, I did set them as a favorite of 14 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Utah State has been one of the better defenses that you're going to find in the country. Right now, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this team is 50th in all of college basketball, and they're a top 50 offense in terms of points scored on a per possession basis as well, so one of the more balanced teams in the country, and really the name of the game for Utah State is generating turnovers. 7th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Wyoming, neither here nor there with that regard. They're about 148th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense, and then on offense, they have a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. They're about 214th in the country in terms of turnovers per possession, and Wyoming with that just altitude advantage at home, they are a different team when they're away from home. You've had Lawland Walker and Nasir Meyer be able to combine for about 29 points per contest, and they combine to shoot about 37% from three, and interestingly, for Wyoming, if you take a look at their tempo, they're about 216th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. If you look just in conference games and conference games only, they are well outside the top 310. They have really, really slowed themselves down, and it's a Wyoming team that has actually been able to do a pretty solid job on the offensive glass. They do a nice job in terms of giving themselves some second and third chances in terms of percentage of their missed shots that are an offensive rebound. They actually clock in 39th in the country, and that takes no fall off away from home. That actually ascends a little bit when they're away from home as well, but you really don't have a single guy on the roster other than Nasir Meyer, a guard who gives you over 5 rebounds per game, so it's been by committee with Caden Bennett being able to give you 9 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and I do think that Utah State is going to be able to exploit that because you do have someone like a Carson Templin who has some solid size. He's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. Gary Clark, who comes over from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, 8.5 points, 5.5 boards. They should be able to dominate down low. And then the backcourt play is very much to the advantage of Utah State. Mason Fosloff, 2.5 steals, 16.5 points, shoots 37.5% for three. MJ Collins, 19 points on over 42% three-point shooting for a Utah State team that they're very good with both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Both are in the top 50 in all of college basketball. And that 2-point shooting percentage is actually a top 25 mark, and with Utah State doing a nice job taking care of the ball, only about 11.2 turnovers per game, I think that they dominate the tenor of this game and they get the job done. I did set my total here out of 150. I just think that with Wyoming really slowing down their pace in a conference game, that keeps it under, so I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Utah State. 731, 732, it's Florida. They're going to be on the road against South Carolina. South Kakalaki is a home underdog of 10.5 points. 150, 1.5 to 152 is the total, and I do like the over. I set my total at a 154.5. You've got a Florida team that's really looking to push tempo in terms of total possessions per game. They check in right around about 55th in all of college basketball. South Carolina, neither here nor there. They're about 219th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they do a good job in terms of taking care of the ball, and I do think that their overall ball security and doing the little things keep them lively in this game. I set South Carolina as a 6.5 point dog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. South Carolina, 50th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. This Florida team is right now checking in 176th, and for South Carolina, they're actually a top 35 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range, so they're going to need to work on that percentage a little bit right now for South Carolina. They are outside the top 255 with that regard, but they've been shooting much better recently. In SEC play, they've been well above 33.5% from three, and that goes at 33% at home compared to 30.5% away from home. And for Florida, right now they are outside the top 340 with their three-point shooting percentage. They shoot 28.5% from the outside. Urban Klavzar has actually been your top three-point shooter for this Florida group. He's been coming in off the bench. I feel like he should be starting over Boogie Flan at this point, who has been able to give you 11.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest, but he shoots 19% from three. Xavier Lee shoots 27% from three, 11 points, 4 boards. Now, one thing that this bunch has been able to do a great job of in Florida, they rebound over 43% of their misses as an offensive rebound. So even with the backcourt being as lackadaisical and as rough as it has been, when you got someone like Ruben Chinyelu giving you over 10.5 points, 11 rebounds per game, that helps out. And Florida, still 44th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis based on the way that they play down low. And it's been a South Carolina team that has been a top 85 team in terms of points per possession. If you look at them in their home games, that ascends to right around about 80th or so. And then Alex Condon has been solid for this Florida team as well. 13.5 points, 8 boards, but he's also shooting 14% from three-point range. I think that there should be a little bit of positivity to be had there, but if they do try to find some positivity, one thing that South Carolina's been able to do a really good job of locking down on, you're not going to be able to get very good three-point looks against them. For South Carolina, you've got Mongolian Mike with really good versatility, 11 points, 5.5 boards, 3 assists. He doesn't necessarily bomb it from 3 at about 30%, but BT Johnson, 35% three-point shooter. He's been able to give you about 15.5 points per contest. And South Carolina, top 35 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Country average with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. And if Florida's in a fouling move, this South Carolina team, they knock down their free throws. They shoot 78.7% of the free throw line. That's a top 15 mark in all of college basketball. And then three of ancillary guys in Eli Ellis, Elijah Strong, Kobe Knox, all give between 9.9 and 11 points per contest. I think that that's enough for the South Carolina bunch to be able to hold in this game, and it is a Florida team that in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis, they have been outside the top 200 in all of college basketball. So it's in my line at 6.5. We'll take the points with South Carolina. I like the over. I set my total at a 154.5, 733, 734. It is Tulane, and they are going to be playing us to South Florida. South Florida, 7.5 to 8-point road favorites. So on this game, 157.5 to 158.5, and I did make a total here of a 161, so I'm going to be in on the over. You've got a South Florida team that is doing a great job in terms of following in their second and third chances. This team, it's 33rd in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and Tulane is not that. They're 354th in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, but this is a Tulane team that I think is going to be able to do a solid job in terms of taking care of the ball. This team is 54th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and South Florida has been a top 75 team in terms of generating turnovers, and when they don't generate a turnover, they do leave themselves vulnerable from three-point range. They're outside the top 230 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, I will say for Tulane, overall for the season, they shoot 31.7% from three. They shoot better away from home rather than at home. That makes no sense, but you've got Rowan Brumba, who I think can take over a game. 19.5 points, shoots 38.5% from three. Nobody on the roster gives you over 5 rebounds per game. His 4.9 actually leads the way, but that said, you've got a guy in Curtis Williams who's been able to get 13 points, stealing that per contest, shoots 35% from three, and it's a Tulane bunch. It has been a top 175 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They give it up from three. This Tulane bunch is outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Country average team on the interior, and for South Florida, they should be able to control things down low. You've got Isaiah Nelson, who's been able to give you 15 points, 10 boards for a double-double, and then Joseph Pignon, he follows Isaiah Nelson along with his coach in Brian Hodgson on over from Arkansas State, 14.5 points, mean three-point shooter at about 39.5% from three. It is a Tulane team that's looking to play a little bit more mid-tempo in terms of total possessions per game. They check in 242nd. South Florida just absolutely gunning it for all mankind. They're currently number one in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. And in a pressure spot, it is a South Florida team that they've been shooting about 73.5% of the free throw line. That's not great, but it's not bad. That's about 140th in all of college basketball. Tulane, they do a nice job getting to the free throw line. They've been a top 50 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They shoot 77.5% at the free throw line, and this is a South Florida team that they're a very willing team to foul, to say the least. They're a top 40 team in terms of putting you on the free throw line. I think that that's just enough to be able to get you the over and help Tulane hold in this game. So I told you 161. So I'm going to be in on the over, and we'll take anything above 5 here with Tulane, 735, 736. It's Houston on the road against TCU. TCU finds themselves as a home underdog here of 8 to 8.5 points. 137.5 is the total, and I'm willing to take the points with TCU. I did set them as a underdog of 6 points, and for Houston, it is a team that I think is going to be able to get back to their defensive roots after over the weekend against Texas Tech. That was not great. They had given up 55 points or fewer in 2 out of their previous 3 games, and they gave up 55 points in the first half. Houston, even with that performance, they're still 4th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're 12th in terms of just total possessions per game, and both teams do a great job of limiting the amount of possessions in a game. Houston is a top 5 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and TCU hovers right around 34th to 35th, and Houston has Kingston Flemings, who had over 40 points in the game against Texas Tech. He's become the team's new top scorer, 17 points, pair of steals, 5.5 assists, shoots 39% for 3. Emmanuel Sharp lives up to his name from 3-point range, as he and Chris Senek both actually shoot 38.5% for 3. Senek 9.7 boards per contest. Sharp gives you 16 points, 3 rebounds per game, and it's a Houston team that has been a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do become an offensive rebound. Here's the issue for Houston, though. They're allowing more second and third chances than they have in the past. It's a TCU team that's about 129th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, and Houston now finds themselves at 158. So there should be some second and third chances to be had, but do you think that this is going to be a little bit more of a defense-oriented game, as TCU, they themselves are inside the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, even though they gave up about 90 to Baylor over the weekend? And you do have a pair of guys that bomb it from 3 points, Xavier Edmonds and Jaden Pierre, who combined for 23 points. Between the two of them, they shoot about 41.5% from the outside. Edmonds serves in their 5 rebounds per game. David Punch, he gives you that punch down low, 2.5 blocks, 8 rebounds, 14.5 points per game. And it's a TCU team that overall they are just a hair outside the top 100 with regards to points scored on a per-possession possession basis, but with them being able to generate turnovers with Michael Zuzan, still just not necessarily giving you the same that he did a season ago for this Houston team, and this being a low possession game, I think that TCU holds in there in a slog. I said my total at a 132, so I'm going to be in on the under, and won't take anything above 6 here with TCU, 737, 738. It's Delaware. They're going to be on the road against New Mexico State. New Mexico State is an 11.5 to a 12-point favorite. 136.5 to 137.5 is the total, and semi-line at 12.5. So one to lay up to 12 here with New Mexico State. Now, New Mexico State has not been the same defensive team that they were last season. They're outside the top 120 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but still not allowing a lot of second and third chances. 76th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And this Delaware team, they are outside the top 340 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. It is a Delaware team, though, that has been able to shoot it relatively well from three-point range. Even with that, I am going to be in on the under. I did set my total at a 134.5 as Delaware is 295th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Delaware actually not the world's worst team at guarding the arc. They're allowing teams to shoot 33.5% for three-point range in a road/court venue. That's actually a top 150 mark in the country. In Delaware, they shoot 37.8% for three-point range when they're away from home. The problem has been they have not really been able to do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball, in terms of their turnovers on a per possession basis. 273rd in all of college basketball. You've got a New Mexico State team that should be able to do a better job on that front, as they're 77th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, as Jamel Jones, the former Meep UTSA Roadrunner, has really been the top man for this team, as right now in the backcourt, he's giving you 16.5 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 37% from three. They've been without Elijah Elliott for a little bit this year, but he's now back in full force as he and Julius Mims both give you 10.5 points per contest. Both combined to shoot about 37% from three-point range as well. With Elliott, he throws in there about 2.5 assists per game. And for this Mexico State team, if you look at their games against non-D1 teams, they're a top 80 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so they do have some warped stats when you separate it out for just Division I competition, but it's still a New Mexico State team that has been able to find themselves as a still relatively okay defense. They're about 169th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Christian Bliss for Delaware has done a nice job getting the team 15 plus points per contest. He throws in there over 6 rebounds per game, and additionally, you've had Justin Fernandez, Tyler Hauser be able to combine for about 27.5 points per game, both shoot 40+% from three-point range, but other than really the top few guys for this team, you just don't have a lot of depth. And Jameel Brown, still dealing with an injury, has been really hurting this team. Makona Henry, 11.5 points per contest. You pretty much have 4.5 guys in this rotation right now for Delaware. And with Delaware, they don't put you under duress outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. With this team just not doing the little things well, I think that New Mexico State on their own floor gets the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 12 with New Mexico State. Set a total of a 134.5, so I'm also going to be in on the total under as well. 739, 740. It's Washington State playing host to Seattle. Seattle does find themselves as a 1.5 point underdog total in this game, 142.5 to 144.5, and with Seattle, I did set them as an underdog of 2 points. So 1.5 is my max lay with Washington State, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Washington State has been far from amazing on defense. They're overall 271st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In their home games specifically, they're hovering more in the neighborhood about 300th, but they do one thing well. They do not allow you to get second and third chances. 15th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They allow opponents to grab only about 23.3% of their misses as an offensive rebound, and it's a Seattle group that they themselves have been giving up a lot of second and third chances. 268th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and you sort of have the opposite going on here. Seattle, top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Seattle, top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but Seattle's also 284th in the country in terms of points per possession, and Washington State not quite like a top 100 team in terms of points per possession, but they are hovering right around about 128th because you got Ace Glass, break glass in case of emergency, who's been able to lead the offense with about 17 points. She's 38.5% from three. And Washington State, who's been a little bit hot and cold with their three-point shooting thus far this season, all of a sudden they're able to find it as they're back into the top 100 at about 35.4%. Meanwhile, for Seattle, after a hot start to the season, they're down to about 174th at 34.1%. But Brandon Maldonado, lone guy in the country that has tried to block a shot with his shoe this far this season, has been pretty solid for the Seattle team. He's one of the better scorers in this game, 15 points, 2.5 assists per contest, and he's been able to shoot about 38% from three-point range, but he is the only other top 5 scorers that shoots above 31.1% from three. Now, Will Hembroyd down low, 2.5 blocks, 12 points per contest. John Suckio, who comes over from Gonzaga, 12 points per game, and then Rondon has been able to give you about a block, 5.5 points per game, but he has not been as effective as he was in past seasons. And John Christophilus has now come off the bench for this team. And then you've had a few ancillary guys step up for this Washington State team. How about a quartet of guys between 9.9 and 10.5 points per contest? Andy Okafor, Emil Yeho, Richard Varvers, and Thomas Thradson. Thradson was dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's been solid coming back, and pretty much all but one of these guys. And Varvers gives you at least 4.5 rebounds per game. And Varvers shoots 38.5% from 3-point. Washington State in a tight spot. They shoot about 73% at the free throw line, neither here nor there, and they do give it up from 3 points. But again, Seattle not necessarily the world's greatest 3-point shooting team. Seattle in a pressure spot. They shoot less than 70% at the free throw line. I think that Washington State goes out there, gets the job done in a relatively mid-tempo game, semi-total at a 142. So at a 142.5 plus, I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 1.5 here with Washington State. 741, 742 on the card. It is Pacific. Let me be specific, as they are going to be playing us to Portland, and Portland, an underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 141.5 to 143.5 is the total line. I'm going to be in on this total over. I semi-total 145.5. You've got a Portland team that is very much looking to crank up their tempo. They're 88th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. With Pacific, they're looking to slow it down, 288th in the country, and both of these teams having a tough time taking care of the ball. Pacific 348th in terms of total possessions per game that result in a turnover. Portland 314th in terms of turnovers per possession, but it's a Portland team that's without Timo George. That is their number 2 scorer, so Joe Foxwell would be able to give you 13 points. Shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but he's now pretty much a lone double-figure scorer on this team, and it's a Portland team that has been 243rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, scoring 14.6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. And even with Pacific turning the ball over as much as they do, they're still a top 175 offense in terms of points per possession, and a lot of it is thanks to Elias Rolfe and what he's been able to bring to the table. Guy stands right around about 6'7" or so, and he's been supplying 16.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 39% from 3. TJ Wainwright shoots 40% from 3 with 13.5 points per contest. Isaac Jack, along with Justin Rochlin, have been able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game, and then Jaden Clayton has been able to give out about 6 assists per contest, and you're not going to get second and third chances against this Pacific team. At home, they allow opponents to grab fewer than 17.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and it's a Pacific team that, if they can get to the free throw line, they shoot 76.2% at the charity stripe. That is a top 60 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got a Portland team that just has not done a great job on the glass at all. They are outside the top 150 with that regard. You do have Cameron Williams, who's been able to give you about 5.5 boards, 12 points per contest. He is the lone guy on the roster right now that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Jermaine Balsinger-Webb, he's been able to give you about 3.5 rebounds as a true 7-footer, and actually is able to pop it from 3, just doesn't do so well. And for this Portland group, they're just not doing a great job defensively either. This team is well outside the top 240 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 235 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And with this Portland team being one that does put you on the free throw line a little bit more than what they'd like, and this being a team that has been okay in terms of generating turnovers. They're a top 175 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but dealing with the injury to George, now having Foxwell having to really headline things for the team, you do have Makai Balu, who's been able to give you 10.5 points per contest, so he's been able to step up a little bit for the team. But in the end, I do think that this is a Pacific team that they do a nice job dominating this game and find a way to be able to get the job done. I did set my line at an 11.5, so I'm going to lay with Pacific in on the over. Sub I total at 145.5, and you got 743, 744 on the card. Oregon State on the road against Loyola Marymount. Loyola Marymount is a favorite here of 6 to 6.5 points, 140.5 to 141.5 is the total, and I did set my line at 10.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Oregon State still having some turnover issues outside the top 210 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, which that's even more costly considering they are a slow and control team, 298th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. With this Loyola Marymount team, they're neither fast nor slow. In terms of total possessions per game, you're going to be finding them checking in more in that neighborhood, about 200th in the country, and for the Loyola Marymount, where they really shine is down low. They're a top 20 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage overall, between 76th and 77th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and a solid 3-point shooting team at home. They shoot 35.8% from 3, 35.2% overall. That's a top 125 mark in all of college basketball. And Oregon State, they overall shoot 34% from 3, but they've got big home and road splits. They shoot 35.9% from 3-point at home, 31.1% in a roadside shoot score venue, and it's an Oregon State team that they just don't fight for second and third chances. Right now for Oregon State, they are 318th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You've got a 7-footer, Noah Ammenhauser, who's giving you fewer than 4 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, you don't have a single guy on the roster right now that's giving you over 4.1 rebounds per game. Josiah Lake, a guard, 4.1 boards, 13 points per contest, lone double-figure scorer on the team, and shoot 37% from 3. I mean, he's right now your top rebounder, and they're hovering right around 300th in the country with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, with the diminishment with their 3-point shooting away from home. That's a big issue. They don't put you under duress. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and for the Loyola Marymount, they've dealt with a few injuries, but now being able to get back Jan Vide, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, main facilitator, 4.2 assists per contest, that's going to be able to help you out. Loyola Marymount has had a tough time taking care of the ball themselves. They're also outside the top 230 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They don't get to the free throw line often, but with Oregon State not generating any turnovers whatsoever, that helps out with that front end. For this Loyola Marymount team, you've been able to have Rodney Hot Rod Brown along with MJ Amy be able to lead the scoring route, as you've been able to get a combined 28 points per contest out of those two guys. And Brown shoots 39.5% from 3 points. Do think the Loyola Marymount going to do a nice job on defense. Now, Loyola Marymount, they also don't fight for second and third chances outside the top 200 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. So I do think that you get a little bit of a, shall we say, lower scoring game. Sub by total 136.5. I like the under, and with Loyola Marymount, I'm going to lay up to 10 with them. 745, 746. It's Colorado State on the road against San Diego State, and San Diego State does find themselves as a pretty mid-tier favorite here. You're going to be laying 8.5 to 9 points with them. Total is between 138.5 to 139.5. I do like the over. It's semi total at a 143. You do have a San Diego State team that's playing much faster than they have in the past. 61st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, double overtime game against Troy, triple overtime game against Boise State. That warps that number quite a bit, so they're probably more of a country average team with regards to their overall total possessions per game. And Colorado State is playing super slow. They are 364th out of 365 teams in terms of total possessions per game, but they are executing on offense. And for San Diego State, name of the game for the defense this year, as they, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, have slipped a little bit, but they're still a top 75 team with this regard. But they're looking to generate turnovers because they'll give you some second and third chances. They're about 165th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, even with having the 7-footer Magoon Gwath give you about a block and a half per contest. But in this team, they're currently checking in 18th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And it has been a Colorado State team that has been outside the top 225 with that regard. But Colorado State is right now a top 10 team with their 3-point shooting percentage at 40+%. In San Diego State, they do allow a few open looks from three. At home, they allow opponents to shoot 33.8% from three. That's outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. And for San Diego State, you've been able to get some relatively good 3-point shooting out of these guys as well. As this is a group that, as a collective, they shoot over 37% from three. That's a top 35 mark in the country, with Reese Dixon Waters along with Miles Bird combining for about 22.5 points per contest. And then BJ Davis has been that top 3-point shooter at 42.5% from three, 11 points per contest. If you include Magoon Gwath, he takes a little bit over 3 per game. He's actually your top 3-point shooter at 58% from three with his 9 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Don't have a single guy, by the way, that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but it's going to be a little bit less of an issue against the Colorado State team that they themselves are really not fighting for a ton of second and third chances. They are a team that they don't allow you to get a lot of second and third chances. They've been overall a top 125 team with regards to rebound percentage, but you've got a quartet of guys, Kerry Booth, Kyle Jorgensen, Brandon Redsteiner, Josh Passarelli, all between 10.9 and 13.4 points per contest, and all 4 of these guys shoot at least 42% from 3 points, with Jorgensen, who's dealt with a little bit of an injury, coming back, still shooting 53.5% from 3 points. All 4 guys shoot at least 79% at the free throw line as well. Colorado State, even though they're super slow, super controlled, and they are outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, country average with their 3-point shooting percentage defense. But I think that they do enough to be able to hold in this game, and I do think that this comes down to some late game fouling. So somebody told 143. I like the over and the points here with Colorado State. 747, 748. San Francisco is going to be on the road against Santa Clara, and Santa Clara does find themselves as a pretty good size favorite here of 10.5 to 9.5 points. So on this game, 151.5 to 152.5. Made my line 9. So a 9.5 plus, I'm willing to take the points with San Francisco. Now, San Francisco is not a team that's going to put you under duress. They're well outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Not too bad at taking care of the ball. They're a top 130 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and Santa Clara's had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. 208th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They get it back with the way that they generate turnovers on defense. So this is a Santa Clara team that has found themselves outside the top 175 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. So they've had to make up for it in one way or another. And the way that they made up for it at home, they're a top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. This has been a little bit of a slower team as well. San Francisco, they're looking to play super duper slow, but Santa Clara, typically they're one of the more up-tempo teams they're going to find in all of college basketball this season. For Santa Clara, they are checking in more in that neighborhood of about 137th in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, you got a San Francisco team that right now they are about 273rd in the country. So I do think that you get a little bit of a lower scoring game. So by total at a 149, I'm going to be in on the under end for San Francisco. It's been really hovering around Ryan Beasley to be able to lead the show on offense with about 14 points per contest, 3.5 assists, only shooting about 33% from 3-point range. He's been hot and cold with his outside shooting, but has been able to do a nice job protecting the ball. And then additionally, you've got Tyrone Riley along with David Fuchs, who combined for 23 points per game, and Riley shoots over 40% from three. Of these two guys, they combined for about 12.2 rebounds per game, and it's been a San Francisco team that has been a top 75 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. They're a top 100 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so they've done a good job holding up there, and this is a Santa Clara bunch that you've been able to have in the backcourt. Elijah Mai along with Christian Hammond combined for 31 points per game, and Hammond all of a sudden shooting 41% for three. Santa Clara still outside the top 200 with that 3-point shooting percentage, but here in conference play, that's gone up to 36% 3-point shooting overall for the season, more like 33.1%, but they're also thriving on the inside. They're a top 50 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and this has been a team that has been able to do a really good job in terms of finding second and third chances. You've got Jake Ammenhauser, who's been able to give you about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game. And in terms of offensive rebound percentage, Santa Clara right now 10th of the country. They get 37% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That goes up to 40.5% at home. I do think that Santa Clara are going to be able to get the job done here, but I do think that the San Francisco defense going to do just enough to hold up here in a little bit of a sloppier game. Semi-total at a 149, like the under, and willing to take 9.5 plus here with San Francisco. 749, 750 on the card. UCLA is going to be on the road against Oregon, and Oregon does find themselves as a home underdog here as you're catching with them between 4.5 to 5 points. So on scheme between 136.5 to 137.5, and for UCLA, I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay the number. UCLA, once again, a pretty slow and controlled team, 299th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Oregon, they've had to slow down a little bit more themselves, 251st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, especially with all the injuries that they've got. Right now, Oregon is without their top two guys in Nate Biddle, along with Jackson Shellstad. Who knows when either of those guys are going to be coming back, considering the teams right now 1-8 in Big Ten play, and it looks like they're not going to the NCAA tournament. As with all the injuries, that does leave you with two double-figure scores. TK Simpkins along with Quam Evans Jr., and these two guys combined for about 25 points per game, and Simpkins has actually shot 36% from three-point range, and both have been able to give you some good production in terms of doling out the ball. Both give you a steal per contest. Both give you between 2 to 2.5 assists per game. But it's led to some very disjointed offense for Oregon. They're outside the top 225 in terms of ball security, outside the top 200 with their 3-point shooting percentage. And the one thing that this team has had going for them is giving themselves second and third chances, top 50 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. But with Biddle out, that means that Sean Stewart, the transfer from Ohio State, who gives you 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, he needs to step up in a big way. And for UCLA, this is not like some sort of a dominant rebounding team or anything like that, but with Oregon still short-handed, they should be able to do a solid job on this front, even though you've only got really two guys that give you over 3.5 rebounds per game, Tyler Bilodeau and the Daily Show and Eric Daly. And Bilodeau, great versatility, shoots 45% from three, 18 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and then Daly 10.5 points, 5.5 boards. Last year, he shot it well from three. This year, down to about 25% from 3-point range. But with all the backcourt issues that Oregon has had, as I was alluding to, they've had a lot of turnover issues, and that is the forte of this UCLA team. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, a top 50 team in all of college basketball. They do a nice job locking you down from 3-point range, and it's an Oregon team that hasn't even been great on defense. Right now, they're about 209th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, albeit they give up about 19.1 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than away from home. But with having Donovan Dent giving out good, clean offense, as he's been able to dole out over 6.5 assists of fewer than 2.2 turnovers per game, they are missing Sky Clark, who is shooting 48% from 3-point range, but Trent Perry, he's filled in very nice, shoots 40% for three, 11.5 points per contest. Xavier Booker, he's got good versatility, 7 points at like 6'9", 6'10" or so. He's been able to give you about 41% 3-point shooting. And hey, Jameer Brown, he's been able to step up as a good 3-point shooter. And UCLA, they're a top 55 team in terms of protecting the ball themselves. I do think the UCLA gets the job done. And UCLA has been a little bit weak down low. They're outside the top 220 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I think that Oregon is going to do just enough to be help you out with this total. I think that you could get some late game fouls. So somebody told 139.5. I like the over with UCLA. I'm going to lay up to 5 with them. And then this is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. This got added because it was one of those postponed games, 751, 752. Tennessee is on the road against Georgia, and Uga does find themselves as a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. 159.5 to 160 is the total line. I said Tennessee is a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be one to take a shot on them on the money line. Both of these teams have been able to do a solid job on defense. With Georgia, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 30th in all of college basketball. Tennessee is still 22nd in the country, and Tennessee does a really good job in terms of guarding the 3-point line. They're a top 40 team with this regard, and for Tennessee, they should be able to dominate the boards, especially in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Number 2 in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. It's a Georgia team that they themselves are 29th in the country in terms of grabbing second and third chances. At home, they grab about 38.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound, but if you're looking on the defensive glass, Tennessee the better team. 42nd in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Georgia just allows too many second and third chances themselves. They're right now checking in 293rd in the country with this regard. And for Tennessee, when you do have so many guys down low, like an Nate Ament, who he hasn't necessarily been able to give you a lot of versatility with regards to three-point shooting, but he's done a great job in terms of supplying 16 points per contest, has looked a little bit better here in SEC play, giving you a steal per contest. That's big. You've got Felix Opara, who gives you 5.5 boards, a block and a half per contest, and then Jacoby Gillespie has had his issues with regards to turnovers. This is a Tennessee team that is outside the top 240 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but Gillespie does give you 35% three-point shooting, 19 points per game, and this has been a Georgia team that's been a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so do expect a little bit of sloppiness, and that's a big reason why I did set a total here more around a 160. I'm right now seeing 159.5. If we could get to a 160.5 or higher, I would rather have a 160.5 to the under rather than a 159.5 or less to the over, but that said, this is a Georgia team that they're just going to get top 5 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game with Jeremiah Wilkerson, give you about 17.5 points per contest, shoots 37.5% from 3, and it is a Georgia team that they only shoot 32% from 3, but they do look to pile drive the ball inside. They've been a top 50 team with regards to that 2-point shooting percentage. Blue Kane, Marcus Millender, they combine for about 25.5 points per game, and then you have a trio of guys in Samato, Surreal, along Cannon Catchings, Jordan Ross will give you between 8 to 10 points per contest, and Surreal has been able to give you 3 blocks per contest. I think that you're going to be close enough for late game following, and this is a Tennessee team that has been a top 125 team, both in their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Like Tennessee here on the money line at a pressure spot, they do shoot just 69% at the free throw line. Georgia, they're shooting more in that neighborhood of about 75.5%, but I do think that Tennessee wins from within, so taking Tennessee on the money line, 160.5 or higher to the under. I'm going to be looking at that. If I had to play it right now, that 159, I would be taking it over, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Lehigh is going to be on the road against Army, and Army does find themselves as a home underdog here of 1.5 to 2.5 points. 145.5 to 146.5 is the total line with Army. I did set them as the 2-point favorite, so I'm going to be one take a shot on them on the money line. Just really hard to trust in a Lehigh team that's outside the top 310 with regards to overall rebound percentage. In terms of percentage of opponents' missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, 331st in the country. They allow about 33.5% of misses to become an offensive rebound, and Army's doing a good job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. They've been a top 100 team with this regard, and it is an Army team that they're looking to go bombs away from 3. They took over 50% of their shots thus far this season from 3-point range. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, and this is not a Lehigh team that necessarily does the world's greatest job in terms of being able to guard the arc. Right now, they're allowing teams to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range away from them. That's outside the top 225, and this has been an Army team that they themselves have their defensive woes, as right now they're allowing teams at home to shoot 34.5% from 3. That's outside the top 225, and Lehigh is going to have the best overall score in this game, as you've had Nasir Whitlock go off for about 20 points, 3 assists per contest, and shooting 40% from 3-point range. In conference play only, he's up to 20 points per contest and shooting 50% from 3, and you've got Eduardo Benoit, who's been able to supply 13.5 points per contest, was dealing with an injury towards the beginning part of the season, but he's been gaining momentum and has scored at least 16 points in 4 of the last 5 games that he's been able to play in. Additionally, you've been able to have Joshua Ingram be able to give you about 5 boards, 10.5 points per game, and Hank Colby is up to 7 rebounds per game, but for Army, I do think that having Mr. Curry be able to lead the way is going to be big, as Ryan Curry has been able to give the team 15 points, 4.5 boards, 5 assists, shoots 37% from 3, and then the Jacksons, Jackson Bell, Jackson Furman, they combine for 22 points. Between the two of them, they shoot 37.5% from 3. It is an Army team that has been a top 275 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. They really allow a lot on the inside, and they, much like Lehigh, they're going to give up some looks from 3-point range, but I do think that in the end, Army is going to be able to find a way to get the job done with just the sheer amount of threes. I think that this is favorable for them. I do think that Army is going to be able to win the battle on glass. I don't think that's going to be an up-tempo game, though. You got an Army team that is right there with Lehigh in terms of total possessions per game. Both of these teams between 184th and 185th in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these teams have had a few turnover woes, and Army's not necessarily a team that's going to press the issue in terms of generating turnovers. Lehigh isn't either, but both of these teams have been quite sloppy with their offense outside the top 240. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so set a total here of a 145 at the 145.5 or higher. I'm in on the under end with Army, taking them on the money line, made them the 2-point favorite. 306-503, 306-504. Austin Peay is going to be on the road against Eastern Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky is a home underdog here of 2.5 points. Total game 150.5 to 151.5. made Austin Peay the 3-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the small number. Austin Peay is looking to crank up their tempo a little bit more, 147th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Eastern Kentucky has really slowed down from past years, 183rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they're giving up plenty of second and third chances, 262nd in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and Austin Peay has been a good defense away from home. They're a top 120 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but where this team really thrives is generating turnovers, which typically that's been the forte of Eastern Kentucky, but Eastern Kentucky has really, shall we say, hit the skids with that regard, while Austin Peay is a top 15 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis away from home. Eastern Kentucky is actually down to 319th at home. That's outside the top 330. Eastern Kentucky does have a little bit of an edge down low with having perhaps the top rebounder in this game, as you've got Montavious Myrick, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. And Eastern Kentucky, top 125 team with their 3-point shooting percentage if you involve non-D1 games at 35.5%. Juan Cranford, Turner Buttery, they've been able to combine for about 24 points per contest, but with this Austin Peay team, I do think that their overall defense is going to be able to win out. This has also been a team that's been able to do a nice job with regards to their rebound percentage as well. They've been a top 200 team with that regard, as you've got Colin Parker and Zyree Collins, who have combined for just under 29 points per game, with Parker throws in their 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists, and Collins 2.4 steals per contest. That's a top 20 mark. And off college basketball, Parker shoots 40% from 3. Anton Berkshire, Tate McCubbin, they combine for about 18.5 points per contest. And McCubbin at 6'8", he throws in their 5 boards, steal and half per contest. Berkshire, he's been able to team up with Ja'Cory Robinson, and these two guys have been able to combine for over 36% 3-point shooting for an Austin Peay team that has become a top 175 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with Eastern Kentucky being as sloppy as they are and taking a real step back in terms of generating turnovers. Do think that Austin Peay finds a way to get the job done. Did somebody total 153. I do think that Eastern Kentucky being well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and getting some late fouls helps you out with the over, so in on the over and we'll lay with Austin Peay. 306, 505, 306, 506. Queens NC is playing us to Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas, an underdog of 4.5 to 5.5 points, 155.5 to 156.5 is the total line. I like this over. I did my total. Actually, at a 165.5 for Central Arkansas. This team is still playing relatively fast. Total possessions per game away from home. They're a top 100 team. And Queens NC, they're playing at about a similar pace. 104th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. This Queens NC team has some of the bigger home and road splits that you're going to find on offense in all of college basketball, and they have just absolutely lit it up when they've been at home. Queens NC overall is 48th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you look solely at their home games, they're actually number 1 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Central Arkansas team that they've been okay with their offense. They're about 195th in the country in terms of points per possession. They've been much better with regards to their defense. They become a top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You've got 2 double-figure scores in Cameron Hunter and Ty Robinson, who have been able to combine for about 31.5 points per contest. Both of these guys shoot about 33% from 3. At Central Arkansas, not going to knock your socks off with their 3-point shooting percentage at about 33%. They've been much better on the inside, top 100 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and this is a Queens NC team that they have not been great with their defense, to say the least. So you take a look at this team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and as a matter of fact, they're one of the most ghastly teams in all of college basketball at 337th. They do allow about 13.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home, though, and you do have the man for Queens NC, that'd be Nasir Man. He's pretty much a lone guy on the roster. That gives you over 5 rebounds per game, about 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, and it's just really a collective for Queens NC. You've got 6 different guys between 9.6 and 13.5 points per contest. You also get about 5 boards out of Avante Parker. Began his career over at Georgia Southern, 11.5 points per game. He shoots 45% from 3. Jordan Watford, he's been able to shoot 41% per 3 with about 11 points per contest. It's a Queens NC team that they really get it done down low. They've been a top 40 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, with Central Arkansas being a stronger team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I think that that's going to be able to win out for Queens NC, as Central Arkansas still does find themselves outside the top 10 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that as a result, Queens NC finds a way to get it done, but I do think that for Queens NC, the overall lack of defense is going to be able to provide a lot of scoring opportunities for Central Arkansas as well, and it's not a Queens NC team that generates any turnovers whatsoever, so I think they get a high-scoring expose. Semi total 165.5. I like the over, and semi line at 3.5, so we'll take the points here with Central Arkansas. 306, 507, 306, 508. Navy's on the road against Boston U. Boston U is an underdog of 1.5 points. 139.5 to 140.5 is the total, and I said Navy is a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Navy's going to be looking to dial things back. 311th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Boston U, still one of the slowest teams in the country at 308th in the country. For Boston U, they've just become much more of an offensive team. They're 112th in the country in terms of points per possession, and they do average about 17.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. Navy is just a well-rounded team. 151st in terms of points per possession on offense. On defense, 39th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And it's a defense that's really been able to travel as they do become a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/neutral venue in Boston U. 326th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and outside the top 340 when they're at home. So that's been really interesting to say the least. Even with that, though, I did set my total 135.5 because I do think that Navy is going to be able to hunker down on defense. You've got a pair of guys down low that should be able to win that battle. Don Draper, 7.5 points, 6.5 boards, first in there at C1 per contest, 8 in KOA, 15 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. And then you've got Awesome Benjini, 18.5 points on 50% three-point shooting to lead this Navy offense. And Navy outside the top 2 with regards to their ball security on offense, but they also don't allow any good looks from 3-point whatsoever. For this Navy team, they're a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that's where Boston U has thrived. Boston U is shooting 38.5% from 3, top 20 mark in all of college basketball, with Michael Air McNair leading the way. He's been able to shoot 46% from 3 with 16.5 points per game. Ben Defty, the true 7-footer, 14.7 rebounds per game. So Boston U has been able to do an okay job in terms of their interior offense as well. Top 75 team there, but outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they're a bottom 15 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I think that rebounds a little bit, but Boston U also outside the top 200 with regards to their ball security, and for Boston U, they just don't grab a lot of second and third chances, and that's where I think that you get the under, because neither of these teams are allowing you to get second and third chances, and neither team is generating a lot of second and third chances for themselves. For Boston U, they're still a team that's in the top 35 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. It's a Navy team that they find themselves 33rd in all of college basketball, so set a total of 135.5. I'm in on the under, and with Navy, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them. 306.509, 306.510. American is on the road against Loyola Maryland. Loyola Maryland does find themselves as a home underdog of 3.5 to 4.5 points. 149.5 is the total. I said a total of 144. I'm in on the under. American has really slowed themselves down since the beginning part of the season. They are down to about 284th in terms of total possessions per game. If you look just since the beginning of the month of December, they have to be a bottom 30 team in terms of total possessions per game. And neither team is awful on offense. Neither team is amazing. American is about 183rd in terms of points per possession. Loyola Maryland, they're 239th. Loyola Maryland, a top 150 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, haven't necessarily lit it up from 3-point range, but neither team is going to give themselves second and third chances. This Loyola Maryland team, in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, are hovering right around about 240th in the country. American is more around about 313th, and Loyola Maryland has had Jacob Theodosu do a nice job giving you about 15 points, pair of steals, 4.5 rebounds per game, has dealt with a little bit of injury, though, and is most likely going to be out of the fold once again, so that hurts this Loyola Maryland team even further, but even with that, I only set them as a 2-point dog because you saw Braden Speed, Emmett, Adir in the backcourt who have been able to combine for about 27.5 points per contest, and Speed shoots 37% from 3, gives you about 3 assists per game. It is a Loyola Maryland team that's outside the top 200 in terms of ball security, and you've got an American team that their strength is really generating turnovers. They're a top 65 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and for this American bunch, it's going to be interesting to see what you get in terms of the 3-point shooting, as they've been a country average team with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. That said, they've got a lot of guys in terms of their top scorers that just have not been able to give you a whole heck of a lot. Greg Jones has been able to give you about 12.5 points per contest, but he shoots less than 30% from 3-point for this American team. You've been able to have a little bit more out of Matt Mayock, who stands right around about 6'9". He supplies about 8 points per contest. He's been about a mid-30s 3-point shooter to be able to help out the cause as well. But for American, they've been able to have a few guys be able to step up in terms of giving you some double figures, as right now you have Julian Eteribe be able to supply about 10.5 points, 5 rebounds per contest, and he shoots 35% for 3. But Maiden Collins, your top scorer with 13 points, throws in there a steal night per contest. He only shoots about 20.5% for 3. In a pressure spot, American does shoot 76% at the free throw line. Not necessarily a team that does an amazing job on the glass, though, and I do think that that's going to keep this Loyola Maryland team lively, even with Jacob Theodosu deal with a little bit of an injury. So set my line at 2. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 144, 306.511, 306.512. West Georgia is going to be on the road against Bellarmine, and Bellarmine finds themselves as a 5.5 point favorite. 155.5 is the total, and I'm going to be willing to take the over as I set my total at 161.5. Now, Bellarmine, a pretty slow and controlled team in terms of total possessions per game. They are 280th in all of college basketball. West Georgia, not a slow and controlled team. They are up to about 86th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And West Georgia has been an improved team on offense. Now, it does go outside the top 275 away from home, and overall is about 262nd in terms of points per possession, but it's a lot better than it was a season ago. And you do have a Bellarmine team that they become a top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, even though they're about a country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage, as they've been a top 100 team in terms of protecting the ball, and they just really make their hay inside. Bellarmine is 6th in the country with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. It's a West Georgia team that they've been a little bit more reliant upon the outside shooting, as they're outside the top 300 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but when they're able to go bombs away from 3-point range. That's been much better for them. West Georgia, they shoot about 33.3% from 3-point range away from home. That's the top 200 mark in all of college basketball, and both defenses are outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That's West Georgia has Sheldon Williams-Dryden, who might be the most versatile player in this game. Jack Garzinski on the flip side for Bellarmine. He gives you 19 plus points, 6 plus rebounds per game, but Williams-Dryden, 20.5 points, 9.5 boards. He shoots about 32% from 3-point range, throws in there a steal per contest. Chaz Lulis along Josh Smith. They both give you a steal per contest, with Lulis throws in there 13 points and 3 assists per game, with Smith 16 points, pair of assists per contest. So these guys have been nice headline guys, but for West Georgia, they do find themselves right around about 300 with regards to both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and they don't generate any turnovers whatsoever. Bellarmine, meanwhile, they don't give themselves second chances. They're a bottom 10 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, so they're getting blown away with that regard. They're hovering right around about 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but with Brian Waddell, he's been able to do a nice job as that number 2 scorer, 16 points. He actually shoots over 62% from the floor, shoots 39% from 3, and Karzinski does shoot 36% from 3. Keena Gooden, he's been able to shoot about 43% from 3-point range with about 13 points per contest. Now for Bellarmine, they find themselves in the bottom 10 in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. So even though this should be a relatively slow and controlled game with Bellarmine's tempo, it is going to be a highly efficient game in my opinion. And I think that keeps West Georgia very lively. In a pressure spot, Bellarmine does shoot about 77.5% of the free throw line. That's a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. West Georgia, we're around about 71.5%. That's country average, but I think that West Georgia holds in there in a very efficient offensive game. I'm in on the overside by total 161.5, and we'll take 4+ here with West Georgia. 3 of 6, 5-13, 3 of 6, 5-14. Holy Cross is on the road against Colgate. Colgate, a double-figure favorite here of 10.5 points. The last game is 144.5, and make Colgate the 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. You've got a Holy Cross team that just has not been great with regards to their defense. Now, they don't allow a ton of second and third chances. They're a top 150 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Colgate finds themselves 250th, and Colgate just not really giving themselves a lot of second and third chances, but the one thing this Colgate team has been able to do is a relatively solid job with regards to their interior defense, top 150 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They give it up a little bit from 3-point range at home. Teams at home shoot about 38% from 3-point range against them. I did set a total here of a 144.5. Right now I'm seeing a straight 144. I would be willing to take a 144 or less to the over, even though Holy Cross, after last year, they were a top 20 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. They're down to about 300 this year. I don't know why, because they bring back everyone from last year, and Joe Nugent, one of the returners, 12.5 points, 3.5 boards, shoots 40% from 3. Tyler Boston, he's back from a season ago, 36.5% 3-point shooter, 14 points per game, and then Gabe Warren throws in their mid-33 point shooting with 10.5 points per contest. Lone 3 guys on the roster that shoot above 27.5% from 3-point range, and Holy Cross, they're just getting absolutely blasted down low. They're a bottom 15 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're good in terms of guarding the perimeter. They've actually been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but this is a Colgate team that can beat you in a wide variety of ways. Jalen Cox, good versatility with him. He's giving you 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists, shoots over 53% from 3-point. Should see that go downward a little bit, but Kyle Carlissimo, Josh Aheri, they've been able to combine for about 36.5% 3-point shooting. Both have been able to combine for about 15 points per game, and then you've got Sam Wright being Mr. Wright with 13 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Colgate team that does a nice job in terms of protecting the ball. They're a top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, right around about 300th in terms of generating turnovers, but with Colgate being a team that's been able to do a nice job thriving on offense, being a top 125 team with regards to their overall shooting percentages. I do think that Colgate takes it to a Holy Cross team that just has not been great defensively down low. Holy Cross going to be looking to play very slow and controlled, 342nd in terms of total possessions per game. Colgate's starting to crank up that tempo a little bit more to about 236, so at a 144 or less in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 12 here with Colgate. 3 of 6, 5-15, 3 of 6, 5-16. You had Arkansas Pine Bluff on the road against Grambling, and Grambling does find themselves as a favorite here of 4.5 to 5 points. 146 to 147.5 is the total line. I set my total 153.5. I do like the over. You've got a Pine Bluff team that is very much looking to push tempo at 36th in terms of total possessions per game. Grambling, more of a mid-tempo team at 165th. Patrick Crary has these guys shooting really well from 3-point range at home. They're shooting 39.2% from the outside. But even with that, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Pine Bluff. It's a Pine Bluff team that has been able to do a solid job in terms of executing away from home. They're a just below country average team, shooting about 32.6% from 3-point range. But I would argue that Arkansas Arkansas Pine Bluff might actually have the best 2 players in this game, as they've got Keon Williams, who was the top scorer over at Abilene Christian 8 seasons ago, 17.5 points, 6 assists, 8 rebounds, shoots 36.5% from 3. Jaquan Scott shoots 36.5% from 3, 15.5 points, 6 boards, steal per contest. It's a Pine Bluff team that has been a little bit better with regards to their ball security, so well outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but it's improving, and this is a Grambling team that they have been terrible with taking care of the ball outside the top 320 with regards to their own ball security, but in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, especially at home, they've been able to thrive with this regard. It is a Grambling team that they are very much looking to gamble for turnovers. They are a top 15 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and first year coach Patrick Curry, who comes on over after a solid season over at Florida A&M. He brings with him Roderick Coffey, who's been a little bit of a do-it-all guy. Right now, about 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, steal and a half, 4 assists, shoots 46.5% from 3, and then Jamal Mutalib along Darius Ward. These 2 guys combined to shoot in that neighborhood about 34.5% from 3, 21 points per contest out of those 2 guys, and then Antonio Munoz, he gives you about 12 points per contest with his Grambling team. The big thing for them is being able to win the battle on the inside, as they have been outside the top 225 in terms of their overall rebound percentage. They're not going to give themselves second and third chances, but they do a great job getting to the free throw line. Top 30 team with regards to free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and I do think that Pine Bluff, with having some nice size inside, I do think that they're going to be able to hold in this game, and I do think that it's going to be a very up and down battle. So I did set my line at 3.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Pine Bluff, and I'm going to be in on the over. So my total 153.5, 306.517, 306.518. Mississippi Valley State on the road against Southern. Southern is a 20-plus point favorite here. They're right now laying 21.5 with them. So on this game, 140.5 to 141.5, and I do like the over. I set my total at a 145. For Mississippi Valley State, they've really cranked up their tempo from the past. They're up to about 107th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They are back outside the top 350 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got a Southern team that they're looking to play very quickly as well. In terms of total possessions per game, they're checking in 24th in all of college basketball. A little bit of warp set. They played that double overtime game against Washington, and for Southern, they give up a lot of good looks from three-point shooting. 14th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Mississippi Valley State, though, is 356th, and Mississippi Valley State was dealing with a few injuries. They should have their main guys out there in this game. Michael James, who's been able to give you 20.5 points, shoots 90% of the free throw line, 34.5% for 3-point. He's a man-line guy. And then you've had Daniel Mayfield be a little bit in and out. Should be good to go here. One guy on the roster that really gives you over 5 rebounds per game with about 5.7 boards per contest. And outside those 2 guys, you don't have anyone else that gives you over 8.5 points per game. It's been rough for this Mississippi Valley State team. And on defense, they're just getting absolutely worked right now. They are in the bottom 10 with that regard. And it's a Southern team that now they've got a lot more firepower in the backcourt. You finally have a 20-plus point per game scorer in Michael Jacob, who's been able to give you 4.5 assists to go along with those 20-plus points. Shoots 40% from 3. Malik Abdulwald, he should be able to win the battle down low. 7.5 boards, 12 points. He comes in from UMass. And then Cameron Broy, not necessarily a guy that's going to give you a ton of scoring at 9 points per contest, but he's been able to generate about 2.5 steals per game. Now, he's been dealing with a little bit of injury and probably going to be out for this game, but still, Southern has been off for about a week or so. Some of these banged up guys, I know that Damari Jones has been missing a few games. They might be a little bit either good to go in this game or a little bit fresher if they have been playing through a little bit of injury. Faza Osadi has been able to give you about 9 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point, and Southern still a top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They look to utilize those to be able to get fast break buckets, and I think that they run up the score here on Mississippi Valley State. Set my line at 25. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and like the over, set my total 145, and wrap things up with 306.519, 306.520. Bucknell is on the road against Lafayette. Bracket Bus and Bison are a 3.5 point underdog. Total on this game 138.5. I did set my total 140.5. I'm in on the over. You've had 2 teams that aren't really looking to push a lot of tempo. Bucknell 270th in terms of total possessions per game. Lafayette 267th, but these 2 teams are not doing a great job on defense. Lafayette 341st in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Bucknell is right there with them, as this Bucknell team is even worse. Right now, they are allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range a nice hearty 38.7%. And for Bucknell, they themselves have just not done a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. Outside the top 3 area in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, you do have the German big man in Amon Doris, who's been able to give you 13.5 points, about 4 boards per contest. So he's been able to do an okay job there. But for Bucknell, they only shoot 31% from 3. They're hovering right around about 300th in all of college basketball. And for this Bucknell team, they additionally are outside the top 300 with regards to both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Archie Spendoan along with Jaden Williams have been able to combine for about 18 points per game. Williams does shoot about 35% 35% from three-point. He's the only out of their top 5 scorers right now that is shooting above 30% from three-point. And for Lafayette, they should have really the best 2 scorers in this game, as you've got a pair of guys that'd be able to combine for, between the two of them, about 31 points per contest. Caleb Williams, 16.5 points, shoots 37.5% from 3. Andrew Phillips, he throws in there 14 points, 4 boards, he shoots 34.5% from 3-point. And then Mark Butler, 4 assists, only 1 turnover per contest for Lafayette, top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. And Lafayette, they have not been good on the inside. They're outside the top 325 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. But that said, this is a Lafayette team that they've been able to do a better job on the defensive glass. They're still outside the top 250 overall in terms of rebound percentage because they don't give themselves second and third chances. But with Bucknell being as ghastly as they are on defense, do think that Lafayette finds a way to get the job done. 1-8 to 4 with Lafayette, set them as a 4.5 point favorite. And like the over sub, I total at a 140.5, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have 1 or 2 ways we all fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at G_81. Keep in mind, RCM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And a big thanks to Ben Wilson. He does such great work over here at VSiN. He joined me in the last segment, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'm back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you.